Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. It's Wednesday, December 21st, 2022. It's 6 p.m. I call the meeting to order. And Ms. Lindstrom, would you give us welcome? Would you give us roll call, please?
Mayor Peak,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith, Councilmember Emilio, Councilmember Beck,
Here.
Councilmember Coletti,
Here.
Councilmember McDonald, and Councilmember Pettori. All present.
And the next item is on the agenda, remote teleconference AB 361. Ms. Lindstrom.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and members of the public. Assembly Bill 361 requires the city within 30 days to hold a virtual meeting for the first time and every 30 days thereafter to make findings ratifying the state of the emergency. The council ratified resolution 21-029 on October 6, 2021, and has ratified it monthly since. The council must now renew the effect of the resolution by ratifying it again or adopting another. Staff recommends the council ratify said resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings of all city legislative bodies for the following 30 days in accord with the Ralph M. Brown Act. That concludes staff's report.
Do we have any public comment? Please come forward. And you need to press the button to turn on the microphone. Yeah, perfect.
This one, I hope is working.
Yeah, you're good.
Hi, my name is Kine Samuels and I live in Pacific Grove. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. And I've been living here for more than 20 years. I have two children. My son is 19 and my daughter is 16, and they all went to school here. And I'm here to be, I have known Debbie Beck for many years.
Mr. Kimo, we're gonna have general public comment in a few minutes.
Okay, so
Right.
should,
So yeah, if you could just hold those thoughts.
okay,
And when I call general public comment, just
Sure.
come up. We're just going to talk about teleconferencing right now. Okay?
sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else on teleconferencing?
No hands raised.
All right. I think we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Please.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettori.
Aye.
Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmember Beck,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
and Councilmember McDonald.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
And Councilmember Coletti, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
And a vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio, Councilmember Pettori,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Councilmember Beck,
Aye.
Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, and now we go to council and staff announcements. I see we've got our Assistant City Attorney on Zoom, Mr. Rubens. Do you have any announcements?
No announcements for the record, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Harvey, staff announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Madelon has three very brief announcements. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, city council members, city staff, members of the public. So three short announcements. The first is I want to thank the members of the public who attended the town hall meeting on the ALPR, the license plate reader safety program. That presentation was recorded along with the presentation to the Traffic Safety Commission in November, and they are both available on the website. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to contact me via email. Our Citizens Police Academy will be hosting the class beginning on January 10th. And they will run from 6 o'clock to 8 p.m. 6 consecutive Tuesdays ending on February 14th. The program offers a combination of classroom instruction and demonstration in order to provide community members an inside look at local law enforcement policies and procedures. And more importantly, it provides the community member the opportunity to interact with our officers. And applications for that are available on our website also, or you can contact Commander Santos. And the last message is about pedestrian and travel safety. The kids are on break, holiday break, and we all lead busy lives and are often distracted. So I want to give everybody a friendly reminder to be alert when driving and stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. Pedestrians also need to do their part and use crosswalks and ensure they don't just walk out. Make eye contact with drivers so you know that you're seen. Wear bright clothing and don't be distracted with cell phones while crossing. Let's all do our part to ensure safe travels during this holiday season. Thank you very much.
Do we have any further announcement? Any council member announcements? Councilmember Emilio.
I have a couple of announcements real quick. I was going to save them until January, but I'm going to, as a council announcement, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it real quick. We can go to the next slide. It's in regards to bus MST bus route. Starting on November 10th, 1 month before the implementation, as you can read, MST marketing and customer service, community relations and mobility services staff provided the following outreach. Public information shared. If you can go to the next one. I'm not going to read everything, but in regards to they've had different public relations during this time, the Herald, Weekly, Kiowa TV, signs, Spanish. Can we go to the next slide? And I want to talk real quickly about the MST trolley. Right now, they are running only 5 trolleys, actually 4 that are running and 1 is in reserves. The going rate is $184.19 per hour. Cost is $105,000, a little over almost 106,000. And they only have, like I said, 5 trolleys right now, 1 spare, 4 is running. The fee, do I have one more slide after this, Gary? Oh, yeah, real quick, the fees to, they have 17 openings of MST drivers right now. So anybody out there looking for an MST driver job, they have to go through a lengthy background check, but 17 drivers for the MST buses. And so in the future, when we talk about the budget, we can look at you see what the cost is, 106,000, and that's about it. That's my council report.
Thank you for that. I'll just add that MST has cut a lot of bus routes and they've increased them to certain areas in Salinas. And so the bus routes 1 and 2, the route is very different. It's shorter and doesn't go in Del Monte Park, it doesn't go south of Patterson. So just to alert folks that want to use the bus, check out the routes.
Yeah. One other thing, Carrie, could you give me a reminder about the MST is going to have some workshops, and when are those workshops again?
January 17th at Sally Griffin Center from 8:30 to 11, and January 19th here in the council chamber from 1 to 3.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I'd like to wish our residents, our staff and council a happy holidays and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And then also I'd like to thank Mrs. Evans' first grade classroom, Robert Down School. Her classroom sent several thank you letters. They were able to visit City Hall a few weeks ago and sit in chambers and get to know what it was like to be a mayor and a council member. So thank you for those letters, Mrs. Evans' class. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, now moving on to general public comment. So now is your time. Please come forward. No, I think someone else is controlling this.
No. There you go. You're good.
You good? Okay. All right. My name is Kine Samuels again, and I live in Pacific Grove, almost 20 years. I have known Debbie Beck for, gosh, many years. Debbie is not a friend, but I consider her a mentor. She knows me. She's nothing, just generosity, kindness, and respect. In fact, her generosity is overwhelming. Sorry, I speak French, so you can see a little accent. And 3 years ago, my car broke down and I didn't have a car. Debbie offered to give me a car. And I was like, not only I wanted to give her money, she said, no, you can have this car. And the car was a Lexus. I was like amazed to have a car to drop my children to school. And Debbie offered me so many things. She refused to even accept money. And I said, can I give you some money because I work? I can. She said, nope, you can have this car for free. I was amazed how generosity she is. And in addition, she purchased a banner for the high school. And my son was that year on the 2021 during the COVID, so it was such amazing things to have downtown in PG. The student can come and check their pictures. They were so happy. Even my son and her friends, they came and they took pictures. They sent it to me and the parents. We were just amazed how sweet she is. In conclusion, she has done so much for the community of Pacific Grove. I am stepping to show the people in PG how amazing she is. And people, we need people like her. Like, who don't have money. Sorry, I'm too close. We need people like Debbie, and Debbie is a private person. Many have no idea how people she mentor and help our community in this town. Debbie is inclusive person that I call a dear friend and amazing. She's amazing. She done so much. Even I work for the Pacific Grove adult school. She donate umbrella for the children to be able to sit outside and have snack. This is why I had to step in to show how amazing she is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. We have a full group and we may have some people on Zoom, but it's so much better to come in person, as I've always said. I was really emotionally thrilled to hear this lovely woman give that nice accolade to Debbie. And I don't know her that long. It's amazing. I lived here 40 years and I only know her about 6 months. So how can you miss somebody? So what I'm about to say doesn't relate to just Debbie, but all the time I've lived here, I've seen many acts of charity, of community, of fellowship among so many of the residents, particularly the ones that I know personally, and heard stories and seen thank yous, just like we experienced here, but not in an official capacity. And this is why I think I'm so happy to live here in such a warm, welcoming community where everybody gets along, and I hardly ever hear of an act of disrespect, of abuse, among members of the community, not just in this beautiful act that Debbie did with her friend and neighbor, but it's so nice to live in a well-rounded, open, accepting, inclusive community as Pacific Grove. So I want to thank anyone that's participated in helping anyone as that nice little example of the story we just heard. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? General public comment? Not seeing anyone here in chambers. Well, okay, please come forward. Don't be shy. Welcome.
Nadia Mark. I don't know what we were trying to prove here, that Debbie has means. I think it's not a question of her generosity. She's fantastic. She gives to the community. She is engaged. She works hard. However, she's had missteps that she has not spoken about, specifically the meme regarding the comparison of COVID restrictions and lockdowns to slavery. I had a problem with that. Some other people did.
Point of honor, point of order, Your Honor. This is out of line.
Excuse me, I think that's the reason we have guests up here speaking to
We
her
have council
character.
policy that specifically dictates you will not insult or direct animosity at a
I'm
council
sorry, I'm
member.
Okay.
not
let's- from the-
insulting.
From the dais.
I'm not insulting. These are facts. So my point is that that was a misstep. We haven't spoken about that. And so that is why there's some concerns in the community, and we want to talk about it. We're not saying that you were not generous. You're not great for the community.
Yeah, let's
That's all.
not. Okay. Thank you.
I don't see how that was.
Anyone else? All right, from our virtual audience.
Jenny McAdams.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Smith, and members of the council. Thank you for your service and happy holidays. A Pacific Grove council member emailed my employer in response to a public comment that I submitted to you all over the weekend. My public comment expressing my concerns and views no names were called, nor was there an attack or any slander as stated to my employer by this council member. In addition, this council member demanded an investigation of me to my human resources for my public comment. I became aware of this communication over the weekend when members of the public shared it with me. A Pacific Grove teacher recently experienced the same retaliatory behavior via contact to her manager and coworker at the school and place of work where she works at. The complaint was in response to this resident sharing views not in line with the same council member. An elected official attempting to sabotage the livelihood of those they serve is not okay.
Point of order,
I am-
Your Honor. There's no proof that this actually occurred.
Yeah.
It's
I am
hearsay and
hopeful-
speculation.
Okay, I am hopeful the council does not condone or support actions that can be viewed as an abuse of power or an abuse of authority. As I am the second resident that I know of who has experienced this retaliation.
All right,
Um,
Ms. McAdams.
Okay,
Um,
sorry. So
this
I
is
am
not a
asking
forum
for your
for-
support and leadership in making sure that additional members of the public do not experience this sort of intimidation or interference from the City of Pacific Grove's leadership.
Right.
Thank you for representing all members of our community and ensuring that all feel safe and welcome in the City of Pacific Grove. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mike Gibbs.
Welcome.
Good evening, council. This is Mike Gibbs. I don't know what to say after those last two comments. I have never heard any of these. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, and this was a total surprise. An attack on a sitting council member by a sitting commission member and a former PG city council member. So I don't know what to say about that. Doesn't seem to me to be appropriate. And I can't talk about it because I don't have any facts. And I don't think the speakers who were just up, two speakers before, had any facts either. What I did, I just had a very short comment. a group of us have been looking at the videos of the Planning Commission and other commissions, boards, and committees. And I just had a very brief recommendation, and maybe there's a good reason for this. Maybe the city attorney can answer this question, or the city manager is. But when you go to the city website and the webpage for each of the BCCs, there doesn't seem to be any way to contact the chairman of each of the boards or committees or commissions. And I think that each city council member has a city council email. So my suggestion is that if you're on a board or commission, if I'm on a board or commission, I want to hear from the public. I want to hear people's comments, just like the ones that were made here. And I hope these comments of the previous two speakers were made in advance to the person they were directed to. That's the appropriate place to do it, not in a public meeting where they can't be confirmed. So my recommendation maybe is appropriate here. Is there a reason, Mayor and City Manager, why we could not attach a city email to committee boards and members, at least the chairmans of each committee, that some way that they can take comments or be contacted by the public? That's my only thought. And the last two speakers, it's very unfortunate that those comments were made. I feel bad. It's out of decorum, and I think it's the wrong place to make these comments. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I will answer that question. All the boards, committees, commissions, and our task force have group email addresses. They're on the individual webpage for each committee. And that group email sends an email to the chair, all members of that committee, respective committee, and the chair, and also goes to the city clerk, the city manager, and myself, and in some cases, the council liaison. So you're welcome to use that, and the city attorney.
Thank you.
And the assistant city attorney. Okay, anyone else on our virtual audience wishing?
Anita Dyer.
Pardon?
Anita Dyer.
Hello. Hello, my name is Anita Dyer.
Welcome.
Is this the appropriate time to speak out on the issue of the parklets?
No, it's not. We just
Okay, thank you.
hold on.
Thank you.
Darla Vining.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. I really wasn't prepared to speak tonight about any of what I heard. And I just want to share as a member of the community that there's a place for respect, and I share common ground with almost every single council member. So I think we need to keep in mind that, especially for a new council coming on board, that there's going to be some places where we need to navigate and respect those, especially for those coming into a new position. All of us in the community don't know exactly how hard it is to get where the city council is today. So I have very, very much appreciation for Debbie Beck and Lori McDonald that are coming into this position. Thank you both, Lori and Debbie, for rising to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Kubica.
Welcome.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council and residents. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Andy Kubica, and I'm chairperson of the Traffic Commission. And I just want to echo what the chief said about traffic safety. I'm speaking as a resident, and I know in the hustle and bustle of times and the holidays, we all seem to be in a hurry. I suggest that we all drive safely, look out for pedestrians, as well as other drivers. Also, drivers need to remember that the pedestrian crossings, the pedestrians have the right of way in crossings and the crosswalks. Pedestrians need to remember that we are all small. I'm 200 pounds. I was out walking my dog the other day. She's 70 pounds. So, you know, we have a total of 270 pounds, and a small car is 2,000 pounds, and a large SUV and a pickup truck is 7,000 pounds. We would lose. So I'm just suggesting that people be careful and have a happy holiday and have a happy and safe holiday. And thank you all.
Thank you.
No other hands raised.
So we're on to the consent agenda. Any members of council wishing to pull a consent? Councilmember Beck?
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think I need to pull it. It's 8B. I think it's just a correction that needs to be made. I don't think I need to pull it for the Audrey to stay on.
don't- It's errata.
It's just that the title on page 3 should read as tax return period and not lodging period.
I'm really actually shocked at what I heard, and so I had to speak up. And
Okay, I'm sorry. Can we mute?
Thank you. And Mayor, Councilmember Beck, through the mayor, we can make that correction. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Anyone else? Anyone from the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item for discussion tonight?
No hands raised.
Okay, motion,
Motion to approve consent, Your Honor. Second.
vote please.
Sam Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio, Mayor Peak,
Aye.
Councilmember Beck,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald,
Aye.
Councilmember Fedori.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, I'm just going to summarize very briefly what council just approved. Well, we've approved our minutes from December 7th meetings. Yeah, we've received several reports, check register from November, the core revenue report also from November, emergency actions. And we've authorized a legal services agreement with a Renee Public Law Group and Renee Public Management Group. And we've received minutes from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force from November and the Planning Commission meeting in September. And that brings us quickly to our first item, 12A, Coastal Wildlife Protection Subcommittee recommendations. That would be council members Emilio and Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start off with some slides and then Joe will, Councilmember Emilio will come in as well. So this is a presentation, Coastal Wildlife Protection Subcommittee recommendations. This is our final recommendations. Next slide, please. We have 3 primary recommendations. They're all found in the agenda report. In summary, we ask that a RFQ request for qualifications for consultant services to assist with the proposed local coastal program amendments and corrections. Those amendments and corrections are attached as attachment number 2 to the agenda report. A comprehensive report describing the use of community service officers to provide wildlife protection and code enforcement. So basically what this would be is that staff would come back and give us a detailed job description of how a CSO would provide wildlife protection and code enforcement. And then the third recommendation is to form a standing committee of the BNRC for wildlife protection. And this would provide guidance and oversight of wildlife protection and code enforcement. Next slide and go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Coletti. Professional services deals with the retention of a professional. I don't have to repeat this, but retention of professional services for a qualified environmentalist and or biological science firms such as Duyek or Rankin, et cetera, for subject expertise, process, and a budget amendment. The additional amount would be approximately 50,000. If I could have the next slide. Augmentation of one part-time community service officer to full-time status. There's presently a half-time community services officers and make it a full-time status to allow for coastal enforcement. That would include everything on the coast, including deer and the black oyster catchers. Examples. Additional annual costs would be approximately $60,000 to bring the full-time community service officer to full-time. Next slide. For training, it's just generally, before I talk about training, someone has to be trained. It may not be the same community service officer 6 months from now or a year from now, and everybody should be trained in regards to community service officers to invest in an annual environmental biological training for all community service officers and the management employee to be assigned as a staff liaison to the city advisory board. Now, another budget amendment that costs approximately $20,000. The total estimated annual cost is 130. We would probably look at that at the budget amendment. Was there one more slide after this? Oh, okay. These are just areas. Councilman Coletti, want to go with this?
Yeah, this is a coastal resources map. Basically, it's showing Pacific Grove is in a very unique situation. That magenta strip along Pacific Grove's coast is actually, those are all parcels owned by the city. City of Pacific Grove is very unique in that. And we actually have, also the submerged lands. The city of Pacific Grove, factoid, 4 square miles, 1 square mile of that is actually our submerged lands out to the 60-foot depth contour. So we have a responsibility to be good stewards, not only to the property, but also to the wildlife and the habitat surrounding it. Thank you.
We'll now go out for public comment.
Inga Doimer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I strongly recommend that you absolutely follow these recommendations and direct staff to do them. Our wildlife and our coast has been crying for it, and I'm so glad that this long process is maybe going to result in some more protections. And I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa Chiani.
Thank you. Council's Coastal Wildlife Protection Subcommittee has developed excellent recommendations for council to carry out the recommendations of the Coastal Wildlife Protection Advisory Committee, or CWPAC. And I ask that you give the recommendations your full support. The mayor's distinguished CWPAC members gave generously of their time to systematically identify threats to PG's coastal wildlife and develop recommendations to mitigate those threats. The council subcommittee's recommended actions provide a logical and careful process for implementation following on the CWPAC's work. Pacific Grove's efforts to develop a certifiable local coastal program between 2014 and 2018 were focused on issues related to regulating development and not so much on protecting coastal wildlife. Of course, the point of regulating development in a local coastal program, as in the Coastal Act, is to protect coastal resources, including wildlife, along with protecting coastal access to public access to the coast. But efforts to develop wildlife protections were limited in part because there were no natural resource experts on staff to develop or even assess appropriate policies. The devastating impacts of climate change are far clearer now than when the LCP was being developed. And in the 3 years since PG's LCP was certified, it's become all the more clear that we need to respond to the threats to our wildlife and their habitat, and to make needed corrections and additions to the LCP to give staff the information and tools they require in order to assure protection. A petition signed by 230 residents of PG and submitted to City Council in 2018 specifically supported the document in tonight's agenda report, providing suggested corrections to the LCP in its updated 2018 version. The current document aligns well with the CWPAC recommendations, providing a framework for those recommendations to be integrated into the LCP. Working with a consultant to evaluate the proposed LCP amendments and corrections and facilitate their adoption will be an essential step in moving the CWPAC's work forward. Developing a plan for the best use of a community service officer to provide citywide wildlife protection and code enforcement is also critical, and I believe BNRC can do a great job in helping determine whether it's feasible for them to serve in the role of a wildlife commission or whether a separate commission will be needed. Many thanks to Council members Coletti and Emilio for their insightful work on this issue. Please support these excellent recommendations of the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Rainey.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to also recommend approval of recommendations to hire the consultant to facilitate the LCP amendment process and the recommendation to prepare a detailed and comprehensive report on how a dedicated community service officer would provide the basis and give direction to the BNRC to form a wildlife subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Aikman.
Welcome.
Hi, and thank you. I had both the honor and the pleasure of being a member of both of those committees, the Wildlife Committee and the BNRC that did the review of the wildlife recommendations. And I honestly think that the Wildlife Committee gave us a great deal of expertise that would cost the city a lot of money if we had to buy it. And it was for free because people wanted to help and wanted to do something for the good of the city and the good of wildlife. I think the recommendations we proposed, we were very serious about and very determined about. I don't think we had a clear idea of how they would be implemented. And I think that the proposal before you to do this through LCP amendment is probably a really good idea. I think it's a way to get started with some things that the city has been a little slow getting into, but going forward, it's going to be very important to our future, I think. This is needed. I don't know that I agree with some of the subcontractors who were mentioned by name a while ago, because at least one has given us some, what I think is really bad advice. But I do think we need to go forward. I think this is a good procedure to do it. And we might consider, we have a lot of expertise in these matters residing in the city, a lot of people that are willing to help, as we saw on these two committees. I think maybe we should tune into that a little bit more and utilize that a little better than we have in the past. But I do think this is a good format to get us started, because I do think this is something that's long overdue and will ultimately be very good and will be in keeping with the visions of Pacific Grove that was part of our very founding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda Priest.
Welcome.
Hi there, everybody. Thanks so much for letting me speak. This is Amanda Priest from the Monterey Audubon Society. I'll kind of echo what Tom said. I think I served on the original Coastal Wildlife Protection Advisory Committee as well, along with other, coastal policy and wildlife experts from NOAA and state parks and Hopkins Marine Station. And so, yeah, like Tom said, there was a lot of expertise, and these recommendations were, we took them very seriously, but like you said, implementation wasn't really part of our assignment. I guess I'll say it like that. But it's so important that these recommendations kind of get solidified, through this LCP process, and they don't just kind of get forgotten, considering all the work we put in. So I'm really excited for the prospect of a full-time coastal enforcement staff position, and then the standing Coastal Wildlife Commission. And just kind of as a reminder for folks who might not be already persuaded that support of our local ecosystems and wildlife does go hand in hand with, reducing the effects of climate change and supporting, the ecotourism industry, so to speak, that brings much of the revenue to our town. But also it's just a good thing to do. So our Monterey Audubon Society board and our members are all in support of these recommendations that are being proposed, and I hope you will approve them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carrie Bertoli.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening. This is Carrie Bertoli. I'm just speaking as a resident tonight and as a member of PG Deer Awareness Group that formed a couple of years ago with concern about the deer that live among us. I know we've come and spoken before this body before, but just wanted to come this evening and encourage you all, please. I hope you will take these recommendations and form something wonderful that will serve our whole community, which does include the coastal wildlife. They're a part of that community. I see them not just as a possession, but as, as part of our community. They live among us. So anyway, that was all. Thanks all for what you do, and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Kim.
Welcome.
Hi, I want to thank both Councilman Coletti and Emilio for bringing this forward. It's been a long time coming, and it is much needed. So I want to thank you guys from all of us out here that are on the rec trail daily as docents, talking to the public and watching out for our wildlife. This would really help us out and our wildlife, and really the city altogether. So I want to thank you guys for bringing this forward, and I back it wholeheartedly. Flippers up to you guys from the Harbor Seals. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more hands raised.
Right, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to thank the committee for this work. This is a really great success story about members of commissions, of the public, and city council and staff putting together something that is really well done, really well thought out. I don't really have anything to add. I've read everything in here. I think it's great. It was well explained by my colleagues here tonight. And I support the use of a CSO to help with this effort, and the LCP amendments, and also the use of a standing subcommittee of the BNRC to work on this, because I think that that's the right way to proceed. And so I am fully supportive of this recommendation tonight, and I just wanted to thank my colleagues for making their efforts on and the committee on their efforts to improve the wildlife of Pacific Grove and help maintain our beautiful coastline, which is something that a lot of us talked about when we were running for these seats. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. I also want to second thanking council members Coletti and Emilio for the great work on the report here. As somebody who's out on the front line monitoring all of the aforementioned wildlife, We see a lot of the problems that go on the trail. And often what we need is people out there to educate the public who don't understand how their actions are maybe encroaching on the wildlife around them. They may not understand the dangers, for example, with the deer, because they're not used to an urban area where there's deer just wandering through our streets. So I really appreciate all the work that the locals do who volunteer their time. And I really appreciate that we finally have a document that really solidifies what our guidelines are to follow, because often those can be really vague. And I think this is such a great step in moving in the direction of giving really clear guidance on what the rules are and what we need to do. Fully support the idea of a CSO. As it stands now, we have to call the police, and that's not necessarily the appropriate use of resources if we have to utilize them. So a CSO who is dedicated to the wildlife and the trail would be a great addition. It gives us the opportunity to educate, to protect our wildlife. And what I have seen again and again is the more people understand what they're seeing, the more they come to appreciate it and love it and support it. We have seal lovers all over the world, thanks to the outreach we've had. And so I think this is such a great opportunity to further that, protect our wildlife, and keep bringing the people here who bring us the revenue and help us share our beautiful city. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Fedori.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to echo all of the comments that have come in. Councilmember Coletti, Councilmember Amelia, thank you for the great work here. My question is really to the staff. We're thinking about funding this position and in advance of that, and whenever we get to the budget time, knowing that it's been difficult to hire resources, my suggestion at this point is keep an open mind and try to see if what kind of scale we need to come to with respect to these resources, as well as if it is possible to hire a consultant. I would like to just contrast the options and not just go in altogether with a full-time resource. Thank you.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. I also would like to commend Councilmember Coletti and Emilio for this report. I think it's a long time coming as well. And I supported 100%. I think it's a great gift to our community as well. So thank you very much.
And I won't repeat, this is just a great effort, and I agree with all the comments, and thanks to our council members for moving this forward. We've been talking about this for a number of years, and it's just great to see this move forward. I have a question for our city manager. In terms of the two recommendations, can you give us a time frame? And my intent is just not to leave it open and give yourself a generous time frame. I know when I do projects, I say, it's going to be done in a month, and it's invariably it's 2 months or more.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the consideration. Yeah, right. I would say no later than Q2 23, we should be able to accomplish this. I think that's enough time to put together a thoughtful RFP process.
How about give us a month? You're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're talking about June?
June, end of June 2023, I think is realistic.
June for the first one?
Well, I think, and this is, I'm going to have to make an assumption based upon the vote from the council tonight, that the budget amendment that would be required, that would come back at the mid-year budget, would be adopted, assuming that, and that's going to be the February timeframe. And assuming council direction is head nods tonight that we could commence recruitment in advance of that. I think that end of June for the components desired is definitely feasible.
So for both items, you think that they can be implemented?
I do.
Reasonably by June?
I do.
All right. I suggest we add that to the motion. Right. Mayor Pro Tem Smith, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, Mayor. I guess I can make a motion. I'd move the recommendation number 1. Direct staff to return with a RFQ for consultant services to assist with the proposed local coastal program amendments and corrections by end of June 2023. Number two, direct staff to return city council with a comprehensive report describing the use of community service officers to provide wildlife protection and code enforcement services throughout the city by the end of June 2023. And number three, move to direct BNRC to form a standing wildlife subcommittee. And that's my motion.
And
I'm
Mr.
sorry, to
Harvey.
interrupt, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem. I think we can deliver the RFQ well in advance of June. And we'll need to, I think we can make this realize all these recommendations by June 30th. So the RFP or the RFQ, excuse me, could come back probably early in the year. I would think that, you know, February timeframe at the latest, we can have that drafted and brought back before council, maybe a bit sooner.
Okay, well, the by June, so.
I just
it
want to
would be
clarify.
covered.
So thank you.
Yeah, I think so. And a second?
Second.
Right. We don't have a member of the BNRC here. I don't see a member in the audience, but I assume that Councilmember Coletti or Emilio has talked to the chair. Are they amenable to that?
They are indeed, Your Honor. I contacted the chair prior to drafting the agenda report and then after after it was published.
All
And
right.
she said yes both times.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I think we're ready for a vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald. Peak,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio,
Aye.
Councilmember Beck,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Councilmember Pedori.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, moving on to the next item, the Parklet program. Mr. Keel, welcome. And Ms. Halloran.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Good evening. This has been a journey and a 2.5-year journey that we've taken direction from council, and we're here to take a little more direction from council to take some next steps. So the recommendations for this evening. And before I get to the recommendations, I do want to introduce some folks that are here as part of the city team that made up some of these recommendations that we use as safety consultants, if you will. They're the experts in their field. So we have the fire chief Panholzer. We have the police chief in the back. We have Dan Go, the public works director, deputy city manager. I believe online we have the traffic engineer, Rich Deal. He is online. We have Laurel O'Halloran, the city planner, and then myself as the chief building official for the city. So as things come up, if you have specific questions on how, why, if it seems off, if you want to understand better, I believe we have a great group that can help you with those. So tonight, our recommendations, we're asking you to receive recommendations from the Traffic Safety and Planning Commissions, received proposed draft Parklet program manual and provide feedback, and then provide direction to the city staff to return with a program based on ordinance to revise Title 15, a new program, policy manual, and encroachment permits. It's a picture of one of our parklets full of people. I think they've proven to be fairly successful. Okay, a little bit of background. I'd like to start before I really dig into when you look and when you Google, if you were to Google parklets in the United States, you're going to get a tremendous number of hits. So when staff goes to set the parklet program from day one, there aren't set standards. There aren't. In my world as a building official, A couple of months ago, the council adopted a new set of building codes. Those are my state laws. Those are the laws that I follow that give me the boundaries and the parameters of how to safely construct a building. Caltrans has Caltrans specifications for streets and highways. Those are for state of California. City has some specific requirements, but you're not going to find a book off the shelf that's going to say, here's the set standard.
Bikinis, waves crashing on the shore, trying to keep them up. And just close to behind them.
I'm assuming we.
What happens here, believe me, I was being subtle saying that. Because the guys in here, it's too,
it's yeah, it's not my first time working with you.
Get some IT help.
I'm very familiar.
Yeah, you're a sexy girl, Sam. Welcome. Guys are gonna be coming up to you all the time, I can already tell.
No, I don't know that.
IT, can you please mute your mic?
Does that sexy ass have a telephone number I can call?
Okay.
Okay, all the other folks, are they muted now? Okay. Great.
All right. So my point with that is that each city or county or jurisdiction is responsible to set their own standards. That's why you see so many different standards. So given that, the current parklet program sunsets on May 31st of this year. So we really need council direction on what to do after that May 31st timeframe. We have taken council direction and we conducted community outreach meetings. We received input from the Traffic Safety Commission and also input from the Planning Commission. So briefly, we heard lots of information, but I thought it would be important to break down some of the commission. There's a very long Planning Commission subcommittee report that's very thorough and the time spent is appreciated. There are some differences in the Planning Commission subcommittee report and what staff is suggesting. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time. We can elaborate as needed. Some of the concerns that we've heard is traffic, access to the parklets, in and out of the parklets, and visibility. We have the traffic engineer when we, as we move through this, understand that every review of any parklet, should you choose to move forward, will be reviewed by all of the staff members that you see assembled here. Access to the parklets. We've got in the parklet manual, we've got dimensions. One of our challenges over the last 2.5 years is tables move, people move. We get menu signs stuck in the sidewalk. We want to clarify that so that we have set dimensional boundaries as to what you can and can't do. With that, it will give city staff tools to enforce. ADA, Coastal Commission, and water permits, those are all built into the program. In the manual, I don't believe that we need to specify dimensions and requirements other than you need to meet these requirements. If a parklet happens to be located in a coastal zone, then we will deal with whether it needs a coastal development permit or not. ADA access, that will be reviewed as we review the plan for each parklet, whether it's existing or new. Water permits, same thing. We're all bound by the rules of the water district. If some of their emergency rules go away, then they're going to apply to these. So we're very well aware of that, and we've got provisions built into our manual. Fire department access and operational permits. One of the suggestions was that fire department didn't have ample access to parklets, and that there was a suggestion for an operational permit for each and every parklet. I have spoken with the fire department about that. They're not in favor of that. That's an additional staffing requirement for them. But also understand when we review a parklet, we will have fire department input as they review it as well. So it is not something that we won't have the fire department involved. Sidewalk dining and parklets. There was a recommendation in the subcommittee report that it's either or. You can either have a sidewalk dining or a parklet. Staff believes that if we comply with the dimensional requirements and you can get both in, that you should be allowed to have both. A big point with staff's recommendation is we believe that the parklets as they stand have been built and constructed in accordance with oversight from myself and Laurel, have been visited by the fire department, and we believe that they should be able to stay. Now, we're also saying that we've got the traffic engineer that has worked with us and will work with us should the council decide to move forward. There are some things that we can do to improve visibility. There's some things that we can do to improve access and how cars move around the parklets. Health and safety. There were some comments made that there's health and safety issues. I'm not sure what those are. I have tried to understand police and fire and the building department, we're here for public safety. So 100% of the time, when somebody voices a concern about something being unsafe, we respond 100% of the time. Now, also understand that a person's perception or feeling of what they think is unsafe may not always mean that it's unsafe in accordance with the laws and codes and requirements that we're required to enforce. So the components as staff sees it moving forward, we see that a single one component, and we've talked about the streets and sidewalk section of the municipal code is found in Title 15. The parklets are in the street right away. We believe that the Title 15 needs to be updated to embrace different uses other than just utilities. We've got a draft of Title 15. We've been working with the city attorney on that. We didn't want to dig too deep into these different elements until we got direction from council. So that's an important part. That would be an ordinance because we're changing municipal code. So when we look at timeframes, we need to always remember an ordinance requires a first and a second reading and goes into effect 30 days after. So that May 31st timeframe, we need to work backwards from there. The draft parklet manual that is included in your packet, we're proposing to be as a city council policy. So it would be a resolution that we would come back to you and after direction, if that's the will of the council, and we would make changes or tweaks to it as the council sees fit. And then finally, an encroachment permit, which is seated in Title 15. An encroachment permit, what we believe is an important element of this, that because a parklet is in the city right away, we want to do an annual encroachment permit. An encroachment permit, and you'll see that if that's the direction, when we take Title 15 to council, you'll see that it has built-in elements, enforcement elements, insurance elements. If you don't do this, it's still city, I don't know if it's technically city property, but it's city right of way. So the encroachment permit doesn't go with the land. It is an encroachment permit for the person that uses that. So we believe that's a very important element, that it is revocable by nature. If a parklet doesn't follow the rules, then the city staff has a process to go through in order to revoke the encroachment permit. We included in the staff report the parklet manual and the planning commission subcommittee report. And again, I do thank them. The subcommittee spent a great deal of time, and it was a very thorough report. So potential next steps is to return back to council. Staff could return back to council with the ordinance to update Title 15. We would return back to council for an adopted manual, and also introduce revisions to the city's fee schedule. We heard and we've seen fee options, and we know and understand that that's council direction. So we would come back with different alternatives and let the council decide, and have that ultimately included into the city's fee schedule. With that, presentation is done, and we're available for questions, and looking forward to public comment.
Right. Thank you. So now we have a presentation from the Planning Commission. Ms. Sawyer, welcome. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members, and also our residents. I am Claudia Sawyer. I am a member of the Planning Commission, and I also was the chairperson for the subcommittee. We can go ahead, and we're starting our Parklet Program Subcommittee presentation. The goals for this were really important to us. We were looking for balance in Pacific Grove. We were looking for equity for businesses in Pacific Grove, and we were looking for things that were reasonable as well when we looked at this. This is not just about parklets, but it's about how are we doing business in Pacific Grove, and how are we looking at what we can do and do better. It's about shared space, and it's about how do we balance this? Because I think that that's something that's really important for us to remember. It's about who's using our streets, who's using our sidewalks, who's using our restaurants, who's dining in parklets. So to move on, our Parklet Subcommittee was created in September. There were 3 members, myself, Councilmember Beck, and Steve Lilly. And I included all the work that we did because I wanted you to realize this wasn't just a fly-by-night subcommittee. We did a lot of work because we felt very strongly about looking into all of the various options that we have as parklets. As Mr. Keel pointed out, there is no manual on how to do parklets. So we looked at our current municipal codes. We looked at parklet policies and practices. It's actually not 16 cities, it's 18. We also visited all of the parklets in town. And we did anonymous business survey of 112 businesses. And we elected to do anonymous surveys because we found when we were talking to the businesses that they felt constrained, that they did not want to have probably somebody coming back to them and saying, why did you say this about these parklets? So that was why we decided that we would do our surveys in an anonymous manner. And we did, of the 112 businesses, 31 of them were restaurants. We did a survey of 100 residents, and those residents, that was anonymous as well. And what we did is I did the bulk of those. And what we really tried to do was to spread out the questionnaire to all areas of Pacific Grove. We didn't just want one concentration. We wanted to see what the members of Pacific Grove had to say. We did a parking study, we did sidewalk measurements, we reviewed ADA standards, and we communicated with ABC, with the Coastal Commission, and with the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District as well, because we felt that those were all important in the decision-making process of our recommendations. Next slide, please. This is a copy of what our survey did. 42 were other, 31% were restaurants, and retail was 39%. And what we found is that 75% of those businesses said parklet should be permanent. Next slide, please. This is from 98 residents across Pacific Grove. 75% like dining in parklets, 74% like the sidewalk dining. What we found, though, is 48% did not feel safe driving or walking near parklets. And it was just a question that we asked, do you feel safe when you do that? And again, as Mr. Keel pointed out, it is a perception. However, when you have a large percentage, it starts making you wonder, maybe there's something that we need to look at. All right, next slide, please. We also put together goals because we thought it was really important of what were we looking at in this outdoor dining program. We wanted to foster a thriving business climate for restaurants and retail businesses and other businesses. We also wanted to look at maintaining safety for drivers, diners, and pedestrians. We wanted to ensure unimpeded emergency access, provide unobstructed visibility for those driving, dining, and pedestrians. We also wanted to provide design standards that would provide, again, safety, visibility, and access to all of those who are designing to partake in outdoor dining. And then accessible and usable by all people. Next slide, please. Further recommendations, we wanted to follow ADA standards for accessibility, which would include unobstructed straight walkthroughs. And that was a large issue that we saw as we walked around Pacific Grove. As we talked to people, we found that if you were someone who had disabilities, there were oftentimes an inability to have a straight walkthrough. And that's one of the ADA things that we really need to look at. We suggested a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit just as a safety issue. We recommended setbacks for parklets. We also had parklet building specifications, and one of those was a 20-foot setback from approaching intersections because of the visibility and sight lines. We also suggested emergency access gaps for these parklets as well, and maintenance of the visibility and sight lines. And the other thing that we looked at that made an impression on us was the fact that we need to have adequate drainage with the parklets. And what we have seen recently is there was a flood down on Central after the most recent rains because stormwater wasn't allowed to flow freely. We have had other floods on the other side of the street in Central as well. And the other thing that we really looked at that we felt was really important was to have an operator parklet maintenance manual that talked about the daily, weekly, and monthly maintenance schedules that we could expect from the operators of the restaurants. I think it's fair to ask to have people be able to say, well, what are you doing to keep it so that it's safe for us to be here, that it's sanitary? And we also looked at pest prevention. Next slide, please. We asked that there would be no roofs or awnings for parklets. And the reason for that was sightlines and visibility. And we suggested that outdoor dining be limited either to parklet or sidewalk dining at any location to ensure an unimpeded, straight, accessible pathway. If a restaurant can prove that they can do both successfully and have an unimpeded, straight, accessible pathway, I have no problem with that then. However, I have not seen that demonstrated currently in Pacific Grove, and it is troublesome. And then last but not least, all of the City of Pacific Grove emergency ordinances and policies and procedures be repealed prior to adoption and enactment of new legislative and policies. Next slide, please. This is a slide that I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a picture of a young girl going with probably her grandmother across in a crosswalk. And we have a parklet that is too close to the crosswalk. And there is a concern that she isn't going to be seen. And when we reviewed the majority of the parklet programs, most of them advise being at least 10 to 20 feet back from an intersection. Next slide, please. And this is a slide of something that occurred on the 9th of December on the 500 block of South Lighthouse. It's a little difficult to set out all of the stuff, but there was a fall in a restaurant. EMS was called. EMS is parked on the corner of Grand. Of not Grand. See it? Huh?
Fountain.
Fountain, excuse me, thank you. And you can see in the very background that the fire department is parked in front of the theater. They had no access. And the thing that's also troublesome, if this were a cardiac situation, the EMS would not be able to have a straight access to where this person had their problem. There are chairs and tables in the walkway. And this is a grave concern. We do not have enforcement. And I think that it's important that we do that. Next slide. The other thing that I think is really important to think about is water considerations. The Monterey Peninsula Water Management District adopted an ordinance that suspends Rule 24 for outside dining in May of 2020. And Rule 24, I was like, well, what is that? It allows up to 1/2 of the number of interior seats to be used for outside dining before a water permit is required. That got suspended. So that allowed our restaurants to be able to continue in business. They needed that during the pandemic. So when we contacted the staff at the Monterey Peninsula Water District, they state that the ordinance suspending Rule 24 will expire April 19th of 2023. We don't know what they're going to rule, but we suspect that they will go back to Rule 24. So we have water considerations that we need to think about. They will need to confirm the seating capacity of each of the restaurants that have outdoor dining to assure that there's adherence to Rule 24. And then the city will need to work with Monterey Peninsula Water Management to identify restaurants needing water permits so that appropriate permit applications can be complied. And again, the city may say, well, that is up to the restaurants, but I feel that if we have economic development in our city, that the city needs to step up and help with restaurants as well, because sometimes they don't always ask the right question. Next slide, please. Then the Americans with Disabilities Act, the City of Pacific Grove Parklet Program, I think fails to mention some of the federal and state handicap accessibility standards for outdoor dining design and implementation. And I think that this can be easily addressed just by using some graphic information. I have looked at a variety, as I said, of parklet programs, and they have some very, very nice graphic examples of ADA compliance. And the reason why I think it should be included in our designs and our parklet program is I think it helps restaurants and designers know where they need to go next. And then lastly, the city to apply federal and state regulations to assure the standards and adequacy of handicap parking in the downtown and East Central Avenue areas are met. We found when we did our parking survey that there weren't enough handicap parking and that some of the parking was substandard because parklets encroached on the ability for people to get into their cars. Next slide. And then in conclusion, the thing that we found that was really remarkable is that outdoor dining has become a really important part of Pacific Grove. We are not advocating that it goes away at all, because we all do outdoor dining. The Planning Commission recommends that a parklet and sidewalk dining program be continued with the following caveats: that safety, ADA standards for inclusivity and outdoor dining plans, that we have the local coastal plan guidelines followed, and that public health standards be addressed in the design, building, and operations of outdoor dining locations. And again, this is about safety and health and for all of us in Pacific Grove that may use outdoor dining. Thank you, and I am available for questions should you have them.
Thank you. We'll now go out to public comment, and we've already I'm going to limit public comment to 2 minutes. And just to explain, I know we have a number of people here in chambers that want to speak, and I'm sure we have at least that many, if not twice the number, virtual. Council's already received, I would say, on the order of 30 to 40, over 100. I'm only going back a couple of days. So we've already received a tremendous amount of emails from folks, and obviously, as has been mentioned, this has been also discussed at the Planning Commission. So we've got already a lot of feedback. So if you could please confine your comments to 2 minutes or less, it'd be much appreciated. So with that, please, who would like to be first? And if you could move into the seats in the front, and then that would be good. I notice everybody's in the back of the room as usual, but you could come forward. It's okay.
This is on,
Welcome.
isn't it? Yeah. A couple of things that weren't mentioned. I'm not saying that I'm against anything, but a couple of things for consideration. I believe when we had sidewalk dining come up prior to the pandemic, that there was a thing from Monterey One about sewer rules and restrictions, like the water that Ms. Sawyer had mentioned, where they had limited number of seatings. And I think that there are restrictions regarding sewer, that they can only have so many people either inside or out, and that maybe you should check with Monterey One on that. And then I believe that the health department says that dogs are not allowed in the actual food service area. And I know that I have a couple low vision friends, and one time we were walking in front of Happy Girl, and I'm not singling them out for any reason except that this is where it happened. And some people were seated there. And just as we approached, a dog ran across, and the leash was right in front of the person. And the cane didn't do any good because it went right under the leash. So I'm thinking that maybe that should be checked into as well. So for safety reasons, thank you.
Thank you. Please, someone come next. Welcome.
Welcome, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for hearing us. I'm a new business owner, just purchased Giannini Kitchen and around the corner. Couple of things, I'll make it quick.
Your name, sir?
Jerry Register, sorry. My partner, I purchased this restaurant because it did have the parklet, and it was a huge addition to us purchasing it and fulfilling our dream of owning our first restaurant. We looked at the cost of what it took to build this parklet, and then looking at all the new restrictions that possibly could go through. And by the time you tear that down, rebuild it, and then you basically lose a third of your parklet, is it worth it as a business owner? What do I get out of that revenue wise? We're already in a business where inflation is huge. Cost of goods are skyrocketing. I'll just go to Safeway, buy your groceries. You all know what that means. When you add on the labor costs that go with it as well, our return on our business isn't super high. A lot of us chefs, I'm a chef, done it my whole life. We do this for passion and for love. We love what we do. We love cooking, taking care of people and making them happy coming in to eat in our restaurant. And I look at it as this dream that I had to buy a restaurant, and you take that away, I'm going to spend, another $10,000, $15,000 to tear down a parklet. Am I really going to rebuild it? Probably not. It's not going to be worth it. I'm going to lose that out. I'll pay my loan off in 10 years. Hopefully I can return that in my business. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi there. My name is Liz Jacobs. I'm a co-owner of Wildfish Restaurant and Lighthouse. And I love having a restaurant. I love welcoming guests every day to enjoy food and wine and just to party. For all the work that a restaurant demands, the best thing about it is just the fun. It's something magical and unpredictable and the result of many hours of the team's work, and it is our buzz. The parklet for us has been the best experience in hospitality that we can remember. All of the restaurant owners I've spoken to have said the same thing, so many of our customers have also said the same thing. And whilst we built the parklets uncertain of whether it would be a good investment or not, especially with our coastal climate and fog and cold weather, we hoped that it would be an asset. What happened next was beyond our expectations. It was an immediate and resounding success and has not diminished. It began as a response to an economic problem, forced termination of business, and then operating with an 80% drop in revenue. And all of that globally then triggered the labor shortage, which then triggered inflation. And just like the pandemic, which has not gone away, but morphed into a three-headed monster they are calling the triple-demic, the economic woes have not gone away, but have multiplied into three corrosive trends: high cost of labor, high cost of goods, and a dip in revenue. So nothing has gone back to pre-pandemic life, not the economy and not public health. The parklet continues to save our business sector and to offer safety to diners. I remember standing on the sidewalk with Marie Favaloro, my landlord, and the owners of Victorian Corner in the early days of the parklets, and all of us shaking our heads and saying, who would have thought that we could do such a thing? Who would have thought that we could have transformed some parking spaces into such a vibrant and fun gathering place with bistro lights, people enjoying themselves, a flourishing civic space? My landlord, who has owned businesses in PG for years, said, we have transformed PG. This was just unthinkable.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Oh, okay. So my husband also wanted 2 minutes and asked me if I could do that.
Okay,
if
he's
that's
welcome to come
okay.
in.
And I should have said that first. Thank you, Mayor Peak. We were patting ourselves on the back. The we who did this is not the restaurant owners. It is the city staff who early on wanted to take measures to save our businesses, to create a safe space, an attractive space, a size that would be large enough to impact revenue and be fit for economic purpose, compliant with every local, state, and federal requirement. They had the vision that the parklet program could be a pivot for revitalization in our downtown community, and boy, were they right. Prior to the pandemic, we networked with the top tier hotels in the area, hoping to get on their radar, to tell them what we offer so they could confidently recommend guests to try us out. It was frankly an uphill struggle. We were constantly told that they sent visitors to the Wharf, Cannery Row, and Alvarado Street because of the cool vibe, the bright lights, and the energy of those attractions. Also, locals had a similar complaint. If you want to do anything in the evening, you have to go into Monterey. One of the biggest thrills was to see the reservations coming in from Portola, Hyatt, Intercontinental, Pacific, etc. And I asked the concierges how they made the connection, and they said that outdoor dining is so popular and Pacific Grove is locally famous for it. Wow. The parklets also allowed us to start a live jazz program, which has been transformative. Locals say they come out of their houses now to enjoy the newfound bright and vibrant atmosphere. It makes them love Pacific Grove so much more. The city staff's aim from the get-go was that the parklets would be permanent, and so their guidelines were based on permanence. All aspects of the program were inspected and approved by professional planners, fire department, traffic engineers, building officials, and a lawyer, as well as together with the water board and ABC. The beams in our parklet were sunk 3 feet into the ground. The reinforced steel safety bollards that protect the parklet from oncoming traffic were sunk 3 feet into the ground. Electricity was pulled, industrial NSF heating was installed, custom awnings were made, and then the commercial furniture was purchased.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Okay, well,
Appreciate it.
I know that there are many of people. Thank you very much for
You sent
listening.
us several emails, at least 2 emails
I
as
sent,
well.
we are one with my letter,
Yeah.
so I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Who's next? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council members, the staff, and the public. My name is Rosa, and I'm the manager of the Fish White Restaurant in Pacific Grove. I've been working for this restaurant for 25 years as an employee. We are happy that we're still in business, especially after COVID. This year we'll be celebrating our 41 year for the restaurant. Due to the COVID, we were able to set up a tent in our private lot for almost 2.5 years now. The tent is very popular, especially on weekends, and it has helped us a lot. COVID is here to stay, and we wish to keep that tent. I want to thank Mr. John Keel and Mr. Andrew, who are helping out with this permit process. I appreciate their sense and cooperation for businesses and pro-business approach. I believe that we are partners with the city of Pacific Grove, and we are happy that the Fishwife is on the top 25 sales taxpayers in the city. I hope that we all be able to celebrate 40 more years. Thank you for your help and your consideration into those matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jenny McMurdo. Well, you have a great deal of information in front of you tonight, which I don't envy you. It's a lot. And you also know that tonight the question is not if a parklet program continues, but how it continues. And as you also know from our letter, I'm here tonight to support the staff recommendations this evening. In the past 3 years, almost 3 years, it's crazy, Pacific Grove has experienced a true revitalization of this community, due not only to the character that the parklets bring to each district that they're in, but also in sales tax revenues to the city that you could use on vital services for the citizens here. We encourage the council to please carefully weigh each recommendation before you tonight and find a reasonable way to keep the parklet program alive and thriving. Thank you for your consideration, your service. I wish you all happy holidays.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Wendy Giles. I'm a resident, a legacy property owner, and a small business owner here in the community. I want to thank Ms. Sawyer for her and the Planning Commission for their very thorough report and getting all of the details that I was quite concerned about. I've already sent you all a letter. And I'd also like to thank the city staff for coming and meeting with me to discuss the parklet in front of the 599 Lighthouse building. Many people know that I'm not a fan of parklets, but I do appreciate their importance and support of restaurants and the community. And I have many family members and community members who have called me and texted me to continue their support and encouragement of the parklet program. One of my, two of my big concerns, of course, is public safety. This is a real concern to me. And also, I have some real concerns also about the financial impact of how the city is going to set the fee schedule for these restaurants, which are for-profit businesses. And that area that is used for parking is public, a public area. It's not something that I believe should be given away freely. And if we look at other communities and cities, what their fee schedule was for use of the parklet area, I think that that is something that I really want this city to look at and consider. I thank you all for your time. And I want to also let all the community members who texted me to let them know that I do understand what their position is on it. And I do support them and understand it, but I also want to see safety and the fee schedule for the use of the parklets. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Some of you know that I spent 35 years in the hospitality business as an employee, not a restaurant owner. And I've always had an inside look at the operation. Most of the owners I worked with always respected me, and I received a lot of accolades and oftentimes was promoted to positions like head waiter or assistant manager and things along that line. I don't need to talk much about myself, but I want to stand here and support the employees who make this operation of restaurants and hospitality in Pacific Grove work. If we weren't a hospitable, welcoming community, you would lose a tremendous amount of people being able to afford to live here, and you lose a lot of tax revenue. Several years ago, I sat down with a former city manager and had the opportunity to go over some of the numbers, and he showed me by category all the businesses in Pacific Grove, not by individual business, but by category: restaurants, hotels, hardware stores, so on and so forth. And at that time, I don't know if it's still true because of the COVID, restaurants were the biggest sales tax revenue generator in this community. So I know you don't get the whole sales tax, but you get a nice piece of it, just like you do from all the sales tax. So that's important to consider. So I simply want to encourage you to work with all the stakeholders. We heard from 2 employees, several restaurant owners. It's important to work with them to see that whatever program you come up with for management of parklets will be reasonable and fair to every stakeholder. That includes employees, owners, customers, and staff, and you, city at large. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I want to wish you a lot of luck and have a happy new year and a Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. My name's John Kramer. My wife and I, she's in the back, have been residents here for over 12 years. I've lived on the peninsula for over 30. We are also business owners. I want to express my support for the parklet program, past, present, and future. I think that Commissioner Sawyer did a great job in summarizing how they approached the program to begin with. I think that it's important to realize that it's an ongoing progression of rulemaking and evolution of both the business model and the administrative model, the things that you guys have to consider. But I do want to express my concern for the businesses that currently have parklets, that I don't think it's fair for us as a group, as a city, to ask them to completely revamp their parklets, the ones that already exist, because it's costly, and they were encouraged to put them in to begin with. So, but I do think that there does need to be some oversight. There does need to be a manual, and there does need to be enforcement. So, but I think that that can all be put together in a package and carried forward. I just don't want to see a draconian rule enforced that makes them have to tear down a parklet only to rebuild it in a different way. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Carl Alasko. I'm the owner of Il Vecchio Restaurant. It's on Pacific Grove and it's on the East Central, I think it's called. I'm concerned when I hear a reference to safety and what I consider to be an arbitrary definition of what safety is. In other words, 15 miles an hour on Lighthouse is safe, whereas, excuse me, whereas 25 miles an hour on Central is not. I would like to see some data. Have there been accidents? Have there been some incidents that can be brought forward as proof that somehow the parklet is not safe? The information that I noted on the screen was that 45% of the people feel unsafe driving or walking near a parklet. How could that be? For what reason? What is it about the parklet that could create a sense of lack of safety? I mean, I would like to know what that refers to. That's all. And if any decision is made around safety, we would have to know what that specifically refers to. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members. I'm Jordan Champagne, owner of Happy Girl Kitchen. I think you've received a lot of emails that I won't be redundant about. But I just want to mention, we've had our parklet since 2014. And we are in an area that would be recommended to not have a parklet. And I did get a report from the police department that a parklet because of the, 25 mile per hour. And I got a police report about our intersection since actually we've been there. So since 2010. And there's no increased incidences. There was no incident reported on related to my parklet. So there is data for that area. And I appreciate researching parklet programs in 18 other cities, but we need data for Pacific Grove and to really look at our specific city and the safety, because I do hear safety being a big concern, and I think it should be. And I do think there should be standards for ADA and open ways. I will also say we have sidewalk dining along our building and we have a parklet, and we've always had that full sidewalk completely open. So I heard it was mentioned that no one's done both. But so I feel a little left out of the conversation. So if anyone has any questions about our experience in Pacific Grove, we've had such a long track record, and you've heard from a lot of our customers feeling safe sitting out there for, I guess that's 8 years. So I really want to thank you. It's funny, it's the shortest day of the year, right? But it's been one of the longest for me. It's one of our busiest days. I'm like, is this really the shortest day of the year? So I appreciate you all hanging in there and hearing us out. If you have any questions, I appreciate you coming to me with them.
Thank you. Anyone else here in the room wishing to speak? If not, we'll go to the virtual audience.
Anita Dyer.
Welcome.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of mention of safety, and that certainly is one of the things that piqued my interest on all the next door comments on the parklet issue. And I would point out that crossing a street in Pacific Grove, downtown Pacific Grove, is not necessarily safe. Whether you're moving from behind a parklet or moving from behind an SUV type vehicle, you can't see into the intersection. And if we're going to get upset about the potential safety risk of parklets, we need to compare that to the potential safety risk of moving out from behind parked cars. The other concern is feeling safe after dark. that downtown is now a fairly lively place after dark. And we're noticing that especially right now. And with people out and about on the street, dining outside, enjoying life after dark, we're all a little bit safer. I know times when I've gone downtown to eat in the past before parklets, it felt marginally creepy. I mean, I know Pacific Grove is an extremely safe town, and I just told myself that and trotted on home. But having people out and about, normal people out and about doing their normal people business is what makes me feel safe. I appreciate your considering this. I appreciate the fact that the intention seems to be to keep our parklets, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Inga Doimer.
Welcome.
Sorry, I had trouble unmuting. Thank you. And I think I'm going to wish you all a lot of luck in dealing with all of this too, because it certainly is an issue. As far as safety, well, I would respond to one restaurant owner of, excuse me, a car has crashed into your parklet already. And on Central, that is a very, very narrow, poor visibility. That's where you enter Pacific Grove, and we have that beautification center divider that narrows things down even more. And it is a contentious crosswalk. Also, the very first thing that staff, when they presented to the Traffic and Safety Commission, the very first thing coming out of the traffic engineer's mouth, Mr. Rich Deal, was that there are visibility and traffic issues on certain corners, especially because there are no setbacks and they are too high. They were starting to rearrange parking in the downtown. And the Traffic Commission brought up, they did not like the options that staff gave them, and they put forth a second one. The Planning Commission did the most thorough job, in my opinion. I am one of those mobility impaired people. Yes, I have some troubles and use a cane. And I don't feel safe downtown. I don't. And turning around on the corners, there are streets that I just avoid because it's too difficult to see, and I'm too worried about hitting a pedestrian. And yes, downtown is not particularly safe with its parallel parking and the way they back up anyway. I agree with the person that said that, and I appreciate your time. Good luck.
Thank you.
Lisa Gianni.
Welcome.
Oh, there's the unmute button. Thank you. Eating outdoors can be delightful. Sidewalk dining or parklets can bring vitality to our downtown, and they're very popular. Vitality at night, especially, is what I was thinking. But there are also significant pedestrian and traffic safety concerns. I believe it would be prudent to extend the sunset date for parklets because the pandemic is not over. And there are additional economic concerns now. And at the same time, city staff should work with the Planning Commission subcommittee and businesses to resolve the many concerns. Planning Commission looked at parklets and outdoor dining in a comprehensive way, including what's good for all businesses. And they did very thorough research, which was especially impressive considering that they're a volunteer body. Problems need to be addressed, and should be resolvable, but sufficient time should be spent working that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Gibbs.
Welcome.
Thank you to Ms. Sawyer for the work that she did. I saw her out on the street a number of times, personally asking questions to customers. There's a lot of effort and a lot of work, and so congratulate her for that. I only have one comment. We happen to be in Los Gatos right now, so we're zooming in from there, and know quite a few business owners on downtown. We just happened to ask one of them who has a parklet today, and they're all pretty much uniform here in Los Gatos if you've driven down Main Street. And the one thing he mentioned was that there were some financial incentives to tear down the parklet that they had and rebuild a more consistent structure. And so my only comment or question would be, is the city in favor of granting financial assistance or economic development assistance to any of those restaurant owners who have passionately gotten up and spoken tonight to incentivize them to rebuild a parklet if they're going to have to do that? What financial incentives or grants are available? And I frankly didn't hear any comments from the staff report or any other report about incentives for the business owners here. And that's what we really want, because we all enjoy the great restaurants here in Pacific Grove and eating in the parklets. Thank you very much and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Marie Gunn.
Welcome.
Marie. We'll go to the next speaker. Carrie Rotoli.
Hello again. Yeah, this is Carrie Rotoli, speaking as a resident of Pacific Grove, homeowner, and also an employee of a business that has a wonderful parklet. In Happy Girl Kitchen, she got up and spoke so eloquently, and we've all written our emails, I know, so no need to go over it in too much detail other than to just say how very much in favor I would be for you all to consider keeping our parklets, doing what we need to do to keep them safe and make sure that they endure for a long time to come. And especially that section of Central Avenue that is kind of the entrance into Pacific Grove. What a wonderful way to welcome people into our town and to see those parklets. I think it's, part of the charm. And, I think they can certainly have traffic calming and we can accommodate parking and all that we need to do and be able to keep them. So I hope that will be what you decide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Kubica.
Welcome.
My name is Andrew Kubica, and Honorable Mayor and City Council, thank you for letting me speak. I sent you an email. I'll try to summarize that because I know from past experience that not all council people read emails. And I apologize for saying that, but it's a reality. The presentation to the Traffic Commission in July was for one block between Grand and Fountain. That's what the sketches were given to the Traffic Commission to review. That's essentially what the motion was on the Traffic Commission. We were told from the Traffic Commission that staff was going to come back with a more fleshed out concept before it came to council. Now, having said that, we made quite a few comments. We had discussions, and we noticed that about the issue around some of the corners, like Victoria Corners at that Fountain intersection. We've got multiple emails about safety on that and visibility issues. The staff engineer did make some changes. with some paint on the streets. And we came up with a concept that as soon as the Goody building was finished, we could block off that side of the street maybe and mitigate the problem with the Victoria corners. Let's see here. We were also told that there were multiple cities that were reviewed. And but what's kept coming up was that the Santa Rosa model was the model being used. And in that model, there was a comment there that Santa Rosa has in there a $100,000 insurance policy. I don't see that in any part of our Parklet requirement and in any part of our Parklet manual. And the last thing I want to bring up is that even with the current parklets and the new designs, there's a problem with curb drainage along the curbs. It causes water and debris accumulation. And I feel that that should be taken care of, even with the current parklets. I sent you photographs of a slight sprinkling one day outside of Victoria Corner. And the driver who would be getting out outside of the car alongside that parklet would be stepping in water. And you know, that needs to be fixed, and that should be put in the product manual. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carmelita Garcia.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for your service and happy holidays. I support staff's recommendation and encourage you to also support it. I do have one comment on page 7 of the Parklet program manual. Under fire protection, it talks about parklets may not impede any aerial access to adjacent structures. And it talks about parklets having to be placed at least 3 feet from any existing fire hydrant or fire department connection. And then below that is the transit requirement, and it says parklets are not permitted in bus zones but may be located adjacent to a bus zone. The city's transit division will determine the appropriate distance from a transit stop on a case-by-case basis. I raise these two issues because it does not mention anything about the red curb. And presently there is a table and chair service that sits on a red curb with a fire hydrant right there at the corner. And I've been told by a couple of qualified individuals that that is okay, because any response team would be able to move the tables and chairs and umbrellas. I think that really needs to be looked at and also added to this Parklet program manual. If the transit company can be so specific, I think the fire protection can also be as specific and not allow parklets or tables and chairs, outdoor dining on any red curb near a fire hydrant. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much. And again, I support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam DeBoer.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council. I've read through the Planning Commission subcommittee report and it raises many questions for me, questions that I think should be answered before any regulations are adopted. Data from surveys are great to have, but they usually lead to wanting more data, and this report is no exception. For example, when asking whether there was any impact from the parklets, the survey left no room to specify whether the impact was positive or negative, yielding the funny situation of one respondent saying that they had no impact and yet brought in a lot of business. Multiple people have referred to the report as being anecdotal, and in many ways this is true. Businesses are asked whether parking was a nightmare for their customers, but we have no information about how far away the customers had to park. The survey could have asked customers for objective facts about their experience in coming to our city rather than asking business owners their impressions. The individual public survey was restricted to only Pacific Grove residents with no indication in the report of how the individuals are selected. Pacific Grove residents are not sufficient to keep the restaurants going, so understanding the experience of the people who come to Pacific Grove to eat is important. The report does not tell us that. The report also provides an inventory of parking spaces in the various regions, but deliberately omits the number of spaces occupied by parklets. So it's impossible to understand what the actual impact on parking is that parklets have. It also cites a 1984 parking survey in its predictions, but oddly does not tell us how accurate the predictions turn out to be 40 years on. The report talks about the safety impacts of parklets on streets with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, yet offers no information about an increase in traffic problems or the number of parklets that have been sideswiped or near misses of pedestrians in those areas. Parklets don't pull out into traffic suddenly. Parklets reduce the range for jaywalkers to illegally cross the street. They actually make the road safer in these ways. On Central, where the parklets are located, the central lane provides a safe place for cars to divert if a pedestrian does illegally pop out from behind a parklet. So the speed limit is really a red herring. I urge the council to send inspectors to the existing parklets and get a report of their conformance to the recommendations and what it will cost to bring them into conformance, both in building and in lost business. One thing the survey results do show is the degree to which parklets have energized the downtown. We should be very careful about anything that would eliminate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tina?
Welcome.
Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, we went to dinner in downtown PG. We chose to sit inside since there were only 2 other tables that were occupied. The parklet was full of diners, and I doubt this would be the case if it was the other way around. The restaurants in this town are the anchor to the downtown survival. They are the #1 draw for residents and visitors alike. This body needs to do everything in its power to ensure that these vital businesses have their full-throated support, not just in words, but in actions. You should not be putting up barriers, but instead creating an environment for these restaurants to thrive. This should also send a message to anyone that wants to open a small business or a restaurant that PG is the place to do it. We cannot ask the restaurants that did the heavy lifting during the global pandemic to take on more risk without any reward. Despite the denials of some, we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, a respiratory virus that has filled up pediatric beds in the county, and a flu that is in full force. One of the only ways out of this, besides vaccinations and masking, is the safer option of eating outdoors, and we need to be responsible with the health of our residents and our visitors. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Mike Wax?
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the Planning Commission's work, and the comments by Ms. Sawyer just brought up a few questions that I had in my mind. She brought up the fire access with fire trucks having to park at the movie theater and an ambulance around the corner. But does that also suppose that we should leave parking spots open in front of all restaurants? Because if they were occupied by cars, the same issue would still arise. And then in the report, I believe I was reading this right, but it seemed like it was putting the onus on the restaurants to install bike racks, which seems, while I am a biker and supportive of bikes across PG, that seems to unfairly single out restaurants with parklets. The other point is ADA requirements. I'm in favor of the parklets obviously accommodating all types of people. And I just like to anecdotally state that my father-in-law uses a walker and is only able to get to the parklets of some restaurants because some restaurants have steps and he can't walk up them in PG. And then I know the purview of the report may have been specific to parklets, but I think in terms of safety and the crosswalks, there might be more options for addressing safety than just addressing the parklets, like maybe lit up crosswalks or rumble strips or speed bumps, something that slows down the drivers as opposed to slowing down the economy. So with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Marie Gahn?
Welcome.
Marie? There are no other hands raised.
All right, well then I'll close public comment and thank everyone for all their testimony here today. And we're going to take a break, a short recess. Let's see, it's 8:05. Let's try 8:17. That's 12-minute break. Hopefully everyone will get back in their seat. 8:17. Thank you. All right. We'll now resume and with council discussion, who would like to go first? Wow, after listening to all y'all, our council members are reluctant to continue. All right, council member Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. Going back to 2020, first, I'd like to thank Mo Amar and the Business Improvement District for truly bringing the parklets forward during the pandemic, and the city staff working through the temporary process to create the outdoor dining to allow our restaurants to continue staying in business. And believe me, I patronize them on a daily basis. I would like to say that Happy Girl Parklet is a great model parklet for our area. And we are the only community that has continued to support our restaurants with the Parklet program. So I'm very proud of that. Something I was thinking about is just as short-term rental owners, they purchase home, purchase furnishings, pay TOT. However, there were issues within the neighborhood and the city opted to limit the short-term rentals to coastal and commercial. And we want to work through this process as a team effort. It takes the building department, it takes the planning department, it takes planning commission. It takes a team effort to collaborate to make something permanent for our community. So we're not just doing this in a vacuum. And so I appreciate this entire process that we're going through. And I do appreciate, yes, my name is mentioned on the subcommittee, but truly Chair Lily and then Commissioner Sawyer did an amazing job putting that presentation together. I hear the need and appreciate outdoor dining, and it is the city's responsibility to make certain our residents, visitors, and patrons can drive, walk, wheelchair, and eat safely. And I think when I hear about the safety factor, it's not the building, because we know Mr. Keel does a phenomenal job. It is really the safety factor of the pedestrians. The crosswalks and those type of things. And I did learn a lot on that subcommittee. Initially, as I've seen people have commented on a letter that I sent him back in May, is we can do better. And there's design features and those type of things that I think we as a city truly need to look at to make this a permanent program. I mean, this is what we're talking about here, and no other community has gone this far. So I commend our city staff. I commend everyone who's working on this, the businesses and so forth. And I do believe our community wants an outdoor dining program in place that will withhold time and foremost is the safest for our city. I do have some comments too regarding one of the speakers did say that the city stated they were permanent parklets from the very beginning. So I would like to know a little bit more about that. And then Mr. Kramer, who spoke, this is the process and the parklets are not going away. We're just trying to work through the process and it takes time. It truly does. But item 5 on the city recommendation to allow either a parklet or sidewalk dining. However, that is not they would prefer have both. I am not in favor of having both. And the reason I say that is I do believe it impedes the foot traffic. When you have both, you have staff coming between, you have people trying to walk on the sidewalk, and I see that on a regular basis. And then also item 7, of the city recommendation, I believe the safety concerns should be addressed about public safety. As I read the city report is referring to construction safety. Again, I have no doubt that Mr. Keel is making sure these are well built. I do believe too, with the permit fees on the recommendation from the city, when ordinance 22-006 expires, that all existing and new parklets should complete a new parklet program application. And it's still my understanding that the parklets are just for the restaurants or outdoor dining. Another thing that I've noticed in the city staff report was they mentioned sewer laterals. And given what we just had on Forest Avenue with one of the restaurants having to replace if they had had a parklet, just to say on Forest Avenue, they would have had to remove that parklet because of tearing up the street. So I'm just wondering if the existing parklets that we could implement, that they have a sewer lateral inspection. Because again, if they're existing and then their sewer line needs to be replaced or it fails, you know, they have to tear up their parklet. So just something else to think about. Would you like me to continue on with this before we go on to someone else?
Please go ahead.
Okay. I am in favor of the height of the 42 inches. And I've noticed on every photo I've seen from the city staff is they show those original parklets, which again, they're just a box and you can see buildings and so forth. And truly, we've now created, you know, upper coverings and those type of things. Again, I commented on, I do believe it should be either a parklet or sidewalk dining would be my recommendation. As far as the reduced speed, I think there's a way we could work around that. Again, yes, there was an accident on Central Avenue. I don't think any of us are here to take away parklets. I think we're working together to make sure this becomes a long-term commitment from the restaurateurs and the city. So perhaps there could be something we can work with on the speed limit where it is currently 25. Item 21, also of the commission's report, as far as the access, I do believe there should be some type of access from the street, and the mention of from one of our callers, where would the fire truck have parked if there were cars parked there? You know, I think again, in my experience was they would just pull up behind the cars and block all the traffic and go into whatever business they had to go into. But because the parklets were right there, they were unable to do that. Again, no roofs or awnings. I do recommend, again, fees will be discussed with city council. I do believe there should be a fee. Drainage, extremely important. I think we need to seriously look at that as a city. I also believe we need to have within our ordinance a electrical plan. I think that's another thing too, when you see, you know, the coming from the structures, and a lot of these structures are very old buildings. And so I'd like to see an electrical plan as well. And that might be it for right now. I'll give someone else an opportunity. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you. Mayor. Yeah, so I think just like to get started, I'm supportive of the parklet program and generally supportive at this point of the city's draft parklet program manual, which is an attempt to govern these parklets, and followed by an ordinance that will be put forth. And I'm supportive of the creation of this type of ordinance. I think clearly there's been, the restaurants have benefited from these parklets. And so I don't see a reason to remove them. I think that the restaurants, we heard a resounding from the community resoundingly that they would like to continue the program. I do read the emails. I think all of us read our emails, and there was at least 100 of them that were in favor of continuing the program. So, and maybe a couple that weren't. So it was pretty resounding. And I think, you know, obviously there's a lot of details to this. Those are my general thoughts. I think that that we need to go and get our ordinance and all of that. So we're really not getting onto the brass tacks tonight. We're just kind of taking some broad strokes, but I think what I heard from our staff tonight, I liked what I heard. I think they're going to take a look at everything, make sure that they do as safe of a job as possible. They're going to keep ADA under consideration. They're going to look at these different angles and things. And I do think we do need to take a look at the angles on a few of these things, make sure that they're all accessible. And an important point that was made in the report and also discussed at the staff report, the oral report tonight. So it was also in the staff written report, is the nature of the permit as a temporary encroachment permit.
And it should be such. We need to have the ability to revoke these permits if needed. And they don't run with the land. The city provides that power to the owners to use it in that fashion. And so that needs to be very clear. It's not a zoning effort. And so, but generally, I think there's some little things. I don't want to go into much depth right now, but I think there's some little things like we got to keep those sidewalks clear. I'm okay with both the sidewalk dining and the parklet dining, but we got to keep that walkway clear, because I've seen a couple of times. I go to the Quill a lot and I look down and I see there's things in the middle of and I know it's a restaurant business. I know the restaurant business pretty well, but it's hard and it's fast and things are happening all the time. So I get it, but that's kind of critical that we keep our walkways open. It is a draw for people to walk through our downtown, but not if it's completely gummed up with stuff all the time. So that's going to be a challenge, I think. I mean, it's probably a code enforcement function or something like that. So there's that. I don't think parking is really, that's not something I think about on this, because I feel that, you might have to drive around a couple of times. You'll eventually find some parking. And Pacific Grove obviously is a pretty nice place to walk around. So it's not too bad. And I have enjoyed, meals out in the parklets, and I think a lot of people have, and that's what I've heard. And so, if we can safely manage this, I'm been fully in favor of it. And so I'll look forward to the ordinance and the implementation.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got a question for Mr. Keel. I'm looking at page 6 of the Parklet Program Manual, and it talks about parking spaces, and it says parklets can be sited along the curb line on streets where on-street parking spaces exist. Parklets may be in any location where there are or would be spaces for on-street parking. So basically, we don't have any limitation on where you can site a parklet other than it's going to be occupied, or it's going to occupy a parking space. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Coletti, the intent is to give flexibility as to where they would go, but also understand that we've got restrictions and we've got oversight. So before any parklet was ever put in, there would be a discussion with the traffic engineer, the planning department, the fire department, police department. So our intent with some of the diagrams was to say, here's where they could go, but we've had people come in and say, well, what about my situation? I don't have this or this. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep following up on that, but
Councilmember Clay, city manager.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Coletti. I just wanted to add on to that, Mr. Keel. I think one thing that has also been discussed, and maybe not in this report or in the manual, is that, and this might be where you're going with that question, if your business is not located, in proximity to those parking spaces, it is not logical, nor should the city issue a permit to you. So in other words, if you're way down the block, but there happens to be some spaces that you're eyeing down the block, that's not logical. We've had that come up from businesses that wanted to have a parklet away from where they were located. And we told them that does not make any sense. A parklet really should only be immediately in front of or as close to that location. So I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
no, that's good. In fact, that's another question on my checklist. So we could limit parklets then to only exist in front of the storefront. But that being said, it's only in current parking spaces. So if there are parking spaces, a parklet can go there if it's in front of the business. Is that right?
I would say yes.
Okay. I'm a little, so I sent out an email. Well, hold on, I've got kind of one more, I think a consolidating or clarifying question, I hope. If we adopt this program as you propose it currently, or as you've stated as what your intent of what the program should be, I've heard that, I've heard it characterized that way. Would any parklets be removed as a result?
Any current parklets?
Yeah, all the parklets that currently exist.
The intent would be if they submit an application and follow the manual and go through all of the application process, they would be granted a permit.
Okay, so we're kind of generating or designing an ordinance that will allow all current parklets to be relicensed or to be licensed under the new ordinance. Is that right?
Well, I'd like to clarify, Councilmember Coletti, the ordinance that we would be drafting is for Title 15. That is to change the municipal code, which gives us the tools, gives the city the tools to expand our encroachment permit process. That's the only ordinance that we would be proposing.
Well, but the ordinance is also going to point to council policy that has the guidelines. So the ordinance incorporates by reference the guidelines through in council policy. Is that right?
We would have to work on those details. That the intent was the encroachment permit and streets and sidewalks section is intended to sort of set up the rules, not just for parklets, for everything else. And the draft manual would be a resolution. It would be a council policy through resolution.
Understood. But the ordinance points to that, correct? Or
Yes, the ordinance would point to follow, if you want to apply and obtain an encroachment permit for a parklet, here's the standards that you follow.
Okay, I sent to council, okay, thank you. We've got an initial draft parklet program manual. I think it is, quite frankly, it's a little light on details and examples, and I know it's a draft. I know we're just starting out here on our process, and that's, I think, the important thing for everyone to realize is this is just the opening discussion. We've and also the demise of PG parklets is it's not happening. So whatever consolation that provides. But getting back to this parklet program manual, I sent out an email. It's the city council or city of Sausalito proposed parklet and outdoor dining program. I'm happy to give the copy to anyone who's interested. I think that represents a little bit more detailed explanation with examples of what the permitting looks like that would at least give me a better picture of what it is that I would be approving. Because what I'm hearing, quite frankly, is that don't worry, anyone who comes into a license, we're going to be on it, city staff, and we'll be checking all the boxes. And that's good. I understand. But if you have it in a document, if you have it in policy, if it's written down, if there are checklists, if there are diagrams, and I heard 42 inches mentioned as the height limit. Is that a proposed height limit in the city's design guidelines? I didn't see that anywhere, or I could have missed it.
We don't have specific heights
right
currently.
I think that was a proposal from the Planning Commission, 42, and the 42 inches incidentally appears in the city of Sausalito's guidebook too. I think we do need a little. I know this is initial, but I think we do need to develop standards that are more in line with what we see in the Sausalito. So if we're talking about the license, so one thing I want to really commend the city on is that we're doing this through an annual license, and I'm not sure if license or permit is the correct term yet, but for STRs, we call it, it's called a license. And the terms of the license, it's an annual license. You have to come back every year to get it renewed. And just like STRs, the parklets will be a privilege, not a vested right. But one comment that you made, Mr. Keel, was that, you know, a lot of the details, like you've got to get a permit from the water district, et cetera, that won't be explicitly stated. I think it should be explicitly stated in our program manual. I think you need to explicitly state that the water permit or waiver must be provided prior to the issuance of the license. So too the ABC permit. Explicitly state in the insurance policy / coverage must be provided prior to the issuance of the license. And is there a thought on what the coverage, the policy, I mean, it will be a $1 million umbrella coverage? What kind of?
So those details, or the details for the insurance requirement, will be seated in Title 15. Because we will, the city of Pacific Grove issues roughly 400 encroachment permits, street opening type permits. So we have current standards for insurance.
If I could just jump in, Ms. O'Halloran, do you recall what our additional insurance requirement is for the parklets? Do you remember what that is off the top of your head?
I believe it's 1 million.
Yeah, additionally,
2 million.
I think you're correct.
It's
Thank you.
1 million.
Great, thank you very much. I've seen it in other places as well. Now, one thing, and it was touched on by Council Member Beck, is that parklet licenses can only be for outside dining. And I believe that is the right path, at least right now. We don't have any experience with putting in parklets for retail or whatever other uses. I think we should focus this initial effort on parklets for outside dining only. And I would like to see if Mr. Rubens is available such that, or to ask a question of Mr. Rubens. And the question being, can an ordinance, can findings be developed that are legally defensible such that the city would only issue a parklet license for restaurant use?
Thank you, Councilmember Coletti. I believe they can, but it would take some study to make sure that we can get the factual basis for those findings and incorporate them in the resolution approving the policy. But we do have a distinction currently with our sidewalk dining program in Pacific Grove, and many cities have that type of program. Other cities that I've seen do have both types of permits, but I don't think it's mutually exclusive that if you allow one, you have to allow all. It's just, I want to make sure that I've thoroughly studied the issue before bringing that forward to you. And we could do that as part of the review with the direction of council.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Rubens. I think I would agree there. We'd want to do our due diligence on that as a legal question, but my own sense of it is that there's no reason we could not limit them to restaurant use only. I think taking lessons from other programs, I think we might think about capping the number of parklet license issues. At least, and if we don't cap the total, maybe we need to think about concentration. Like, do we want one block to have, completely occupied by parklets? So I think concentration / cap on licenses is going to be important to look at. 2 more. I've got 2 more. Public access. I don't think we should deny access to non-customers. And if we're going to be putting parklets in the coastal zone, I can guarantee you the Coastal Commission wouldn't allow you to do that anyway. So I think we should probably have a uniform rule on that. I don't think it's a current problem, but I don't think we should limit it. And then we definitely need to drill down into the licensing fee. Again, the city of Sausalito's guide has a nice section on fees, including examples from other jurisdictions. So I think we need some more details on that.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Coletti. I just wanted to point out a fun fact. Are you aware that Mr. Rubens is now the city attorney for Sausalito?
Congratulations.
Yeah, I've taken a look at it, but I have not compared the two programs.
Okay, well, thank you.
Councilmember Paduri.
Thank you, Mayor. I would first like to thank everyone that has participated during this process. The staff, the planning commission, the subcommittee members, all the businesses, actually a special thanks to all the businesses who have helped the city actually go through the pandemic, bring in more revenue, put in that extra effort to put the parklets in and make sure that you, as well as the city, is able to come out of the pandemic. We're still through the, not really done, but at least we're in a state where we can say that we have a budget, we can work with that budget and take things forward. So thank you, everybody. First of all, I wanted to mention that at least from just looking at all the emails that have flown in for the past, I would say, month or so, I've never seen any sentence where Pacific Grove and Vibrant are together. So this is one of those rare cases, and I think we should continue with this rare case as we move forward, because vibrancy is definitely required in downtown PG. So how do we bring about this downtown Pacific Grove vibrancy into the equation? I think the pandemic has created a wonderful opportunity for us to actually increase parklets, increase visitors to town. And one of the big aspects is from Pacific Grove is these visitors. One of the callers or somebody over here had remarked about sales tax revenue and restaurants bringing in sales tax revenue. Last quarter, Q2 of 2022, which is the report that I have, restaurants were in fact the #1 contributor to sales tax revenue. When we looked at agenda items today, there was a agenda item about a community service officer, and that costing the city $140,000. There is an agenda item later on today, which talks about a vehicle, which costs about close to $100,000. Where is all this money coming from? And really, this is these businesses are contributing these revenue elements. This is the tourist town. We need to admit it. Tourist sales are the &1 driver for us. So in light of all of those, I would say that first of all, I really appreciate the fact that there are so many volunteers. This entire community is behind this process. And when I came into this meeting, I had the mindset that we had two different proposals to look at. But now that I'm looking at things and hearing all the comments here, we in fact are together working as a community towards one proposal. And really that's what I'm looking at, how we need to drive things forward, which is we already have some parklets as a base. We need to look at this base, the framework that we have created, and then we need to expand this to see how we can make improvements. Well, that could be safety, that could be something else, but we need to look at that from an incremental perspective. And so my view is that we need to look at staff recommendations as a draft. We need to make sure that we're not demolishing any structures. We need to see how we can improve those structures. So it could be that safety may be an element with respect to crossing, et cetera, but there may be other avenues that we can look at to make sure that the businesses and the community are thriving together. The other point that I would like to make is and this is also the case when I was conducting some meetings earlier this year, we tend to emphasize a lot on cars and we tend to emphasize a lot on parking. Really, the emphasis should be on people. So when we think about a community, when I think about downtown PG, the way I think about downtown PG is I'm able to walk there, I'm able to eat there, I'm able to take my kids there, and I'm able to enjoy the experience. I don't think about my car and my parking. And I think we need to change our mindset towards really having folks in downtown PG. And how do we achieve that? This is a wonderful way to get there. So I had listed quite a lot of points based on my preconceived notion that these were alternative proposals, but I think this is a proposal where we can work collectively to draft it out. But one of those things that struck me, a couple of things that I wanted to, at least the staff to capture is There was some mention about signage. I mean, these parklets have, I mean, they're now sitting in the middle of the street, and folks that are driving do not know what the next street is, or maybe they're hidden from you, et cetera. So you can probably consider having some signage. I think this came out of the Planning Commission report, which is where you can put some signage on these parklets to state that A, this is the restaurant, or B, the next street is so on and so forth. The other thing too is somebody commented that Central Avenue was 25 miles per hour in a certain segment, 15 miles per hour certain segment. I can tell you that one of the big things with traffic is how do we bring calming measures? And parklets are in fact proven to be a calming measure wherein folks actually know that there's a big structure in front of them, they shouldn't be speeding. So in light of that note, I would ask staff to at least review if there is any way to make it 15 miles per hour. I mean, probably that's the direction that we need to go. Why are we having it? I mean, there's a structure there now when there was not a structure there before. So why do we still have the speed limit at 25 miles per hour? Maybe we need to reduce it to 15 miles per hour. But and this is just a suggestion, but generally I'm in support of the staff recommendations. And I believe that if we can work with some of the PC recommendations that have come in and the collective input that the community has provided, we can get to a better place, all of us together. Thank you.
Councilmember Emilio.
After seeing the surveys and everything, it seemed like it was 7 hours ago. And I wrote some notes, and some of them are repeating of what's been said before. And I wanted, first off, like Councilperson Badori said, I had on my notes that to thank everybody for the 100+ emails, and I did read all of them, and I did respond to some of them. I appreciate all the emails and the public opinion that came up here and on Zoom. That I appreciate, and I listened to you. Now, some of the things I'm going to talk about will be talked about of certain restaurants, and I wrote this thing up a few days ago, and I've revised it 3 or 4 times. And anyway, going back, and I appreciate the Planning Commission's work on this, on the parklets. It's very important that we work together on this. A couple of notes on the Planning Commission subcommittee. There appears to be about, depending upon the question, 29 to 112 people were surveyed. And we do have 15,400 residents in Pacific Grove. I want to also point out that 75% of the people surveyed were good for businesses, and 90% surveyed want the parklets to be permanent. The others said that 75% said the parking was not an issue. And I know for myself and friends that we've visited the parklets and gone out to dinner. Yes, maybe we had to park a half a block away, but you know, walking is good. Walking is good. I think that's very important. Sometimes I know it's not to be discussed right now, but be nice if the whole area was walking area for everybody. There's overwhelming majority want to keep the parklets. I think the 15-mile-an-hour zone, that's to me, that's got to be a traffic survey before the 15-mile-an-hour zone goes. I'm not sure, because some of the parklets that are on Central, I know there's 25-mile-an-hour zones, and I want to talk about that for a little bit. HDL is our consultant. They said that parklets are thriving, again, for our restaurants and our businesses. in downtown PG, and it creates a positive atmosphere. Many of the examples of the parklets, and I'm not specifically naming these restaurants, but I had this written up a few days ago. So many of the parklets that are very busy is Vivelo's, Wild Fish, Happy Girl Kitchen. I've been down there several times, and Happy Girl Kitchens, as was pointed out by the public, was the first parklet in Pacific Grove. It was 8-9 years ago. And I think also eating outside has helped, because right now, COVID and respiratory illnesses are up for everybody. Chomp just opened a tent for respiratory illnesses and COVID. COVID right now in Monterey County is going up 1% a week. Now that's not a lot, right? But when you count all the Monterey County residents here, that's quite a lot. So we don't want to be suddenly yanking any of the current parklets out. Another important part, I think, is if suddenly some of the parklets were to disappear, let's talk about the employment. For the restaurants, let's not forget about the service workers. The service workers are some are minority. They will be affected if we have no more parklets. They will be affected. They'll be part of the unemployment line. Parklets it's already been talked about, a vibrancy downtown. There's an energy in Pacific Grove. I'm sure everybody remembers Pacific Grove prior to the parking lots. Pacific Grove shut down about 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock. It was dark. It was nothing as compared to today, where you have lighted parklets, people enjoying themselves, and how busy they get, for example, during the butterfly parades, the car shows. You can get into any of the parklets during the time, and it's true, a lot of visitors come. There's a couple other places I've noticed that's very busy in all times of the days is Vivelo's, because I'm on that side of the street a lot, and their parklets are clear of the walkway. Let's see, the California Coastal Commission. The California Coastal Commission stated in a letter to the parklets on the wharf, the Coastal Commission said this, quote, "We acknowledge the present difficulties with the ongoing surge in COVID and respiratory illnesses, and fully understand the roles of the outdoor dining in navigating through these challenges," unquote. That was from the California Coastal Commission. I recommend that we accept the staff recommendations to the parklets. And as it's already been mentioned, but I think some type of, as a compromise, some type of signage, maybe, those flashing lights at crossing the street on David Avenue from Lucky's, maybe in a couple of those intersections. If someone wants to cross the street near a parklet there, they could press the button and the strips will show, and restriping the crosswalks to make them brighter. That's as a compromise. Generally, I accept the staff recommendations.
Councilmember McDonald.
I also want to reiterate, thank you to everybody who worked so hard to pull this information together. And thank you to the public for all your comments, because I took notes on them and they informed a lot of the issues that I wanted to bring forward and think about. So I really appreciate the process where the public's commenting, the restaurants are commenting, the planning commission actually went to so much effort to get out there and actually measure and see what we're in compliance with and where we may need to make improvements. So I get the impression that really the goal for everyone is to keep the parklets, but how can we do this in a way that's safe for our community? So that we want to enhance the vitality of businesses while also ensuring the safety of the patrons and the people working in the businesses and the people driving, because obviously we don't want any kind of tragedy. So anything we can do to be proactive and think about how to implement this in a good way, that's a valuable part of this process. So I'm glad that somebody brought up, or that several people have brought up, that this is kind of a starting point, a draft, because I also think that it's very important to have enough information that when a business owner decides, I want to have a parklet, there are actually clear guidelines to follow, and they don't have to go look various different places to figure out how to implement this. I think it's on us to make it very clear what our requirements are as a city, so that it's a really easy process for people to know exactly what they need to do every step of the way. It'll be an important decision for people to decide whether to invest. And I think that's important information for us to have available up front. So I really appreciate all the efforts that have gone into developing all of this. And so I think it's important that we work together with the Planning Commission and their recommendations to make sure some of those that aren't in the current draft are implemented. And if some of them maybe we want to look at, do we need a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And that's something that maybe the Traffic Commission has some input on. I don't know that this ever went back to them. There was, I think there was something about it maybe going back to them at some point. And so just making sure that we're looking at that. ADA access is a big one. I have a friend in a wheelchair, and I would never deem to try and navigate Pacific Grove city streets with her as it stands now because of the example of the picture we saw. It is important for safety, and for, if we want people to walk through the streets, we need to actually provide access through the streets for them to walk through. So I don't have an opinion on parklet or sidewalk only, as long as it's not encroaching on any of that access. And the other thing I think that's important is I appreciated the comments about having the fire access points. So I don't know if that was already consulted on with the fire department, but I think that's important to make sure before asking the businesses to do that, that we make sure that that's what the fire department recommends and help the ones that are already built to comply with that. I guess what I came away with this is, I don't think we want to try and have anybody have to remove and reinstall their parklets. So anything we can do to work with the regulations that are needed for safety, and with the businesses who in good faith worked with the city to develop these, that they expected to be compliant, as long as they're doing that and they're safe and they're meeting ADA requirements and everything else, then I think that's good. A couple of points that, and again, this is a draft, so this may come in later, but I just wanted to point out, the initial one said that 9 p.m. would be the stop time for music and loud amplified sound. From what I've understood, everything else in the city is 9 p.m. and we already have a lot of residents in the local area that are already saying they hear a lot of this noise. So, and I was reading the ordinance too, that it has to be contained within that locale. So if it's getting loud enough where people can't sleep at night and that's impacting their lives, then I think we need to address that and just not ignore that issue. So I think we need to look at that and see, are there other sound mitigations we could do so people could still enjoy that and also not disturb the local neighbors, especially in light of when we try to put our RINIA numbers, we're going to say to build more above businesses, and that will bring even more residents living right above those businesses. So I think that's an important point. I did notice too in the Planning Commission one, there was mention of taking care of the trees to make sure they're not harmed, using those as part of the landscaping and native, and there's no mention of that in the city one. So I'd like to see that incorporated as well, because we obviously don't want to lose that. I think that is some of the charm. So just making sure we're addressing that. Yeah, and I like that they've addressed the encroachment permits. I thought that was great that most of the restaurants recognize that there should be a fee schedule for using the parklet. It's kind of like added square footage to the restaurant. So I don't think anybody's disputing that. So for anybody who's concerned about that, I didn't get the impression that that would be an issue. But I think overall, I think we're all in agreement. Well, not everyone. There are a few people who, especially because of safety, don't like the idea. But I think if we can address those concerns, it is something that has brought a whole new life to Pacific Grove, like Zoom. It's one of those things that I think has sort of improved life as a result of COVID. It's something where we've shown our resilience and come out stronger. So anything we can do to work together to implement that, I would support. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody that's spent so much time, well, not only tonight, but well, Mr. Keel said 2.5 years. It's when it started this program, of course, at the advent of COVID. And who knew that this could happen? I recall pre-COVID talking to the former planning director about putting dining out in the street adjacent to the curb, and was told, well, there's utilities there. Of course, you can't do that. And then, you know, here we are today, and we have so many parklets and they've been so successful. Anyhow, I forgot my train of thought is to thank all the business owners, the restaurateurs that helped, that put forth the money, put it in place. And also the staff and particularly the planning commission, who just did an awesome job of studying this and just getting, don't be offended, down into the weeds to tell us what's going on. And even though we might not adopt, you know, all the specifics, it's definitely influenced our thinking. And I know that staff has already made the comment that it's had some impact on their thinking. So thank you so much to the Planning Commission for all those efforts. Okay, I'm going to jump into the weeds for a few minutes. I'm going to try to be brief. I know everybody's dying to get out of here. Anyhow, so this would be a new chapter in Title 15. Title 15 is the code, streets and sidewalks. There is no chapter called permit encroachment. So I'm assuming this would be called parklets, perhaps. But maybe that's for you to decide, getting with city attorney on that. And this would regulate parklets as you've described, which is in parking areas in the right of way. So it's not going to regulate sidewalk dining or outdoor dining in general, is my understanding. Is that correct? Or outdoor dining, not in parklets. This isn't going to, what you're going to bring back is not going to regulate that.
Mr. Mayor, we're looking for council direction, so I think you could, sidewalks are within the public right of way. So I think you could, as you were suggesting, just have a new chapter. You could have both specifically parklets and sidewalk dining if you like, or some variation thereof.
Well, I'm suggesting let's put them in the code distinct. There is sidewalk dining already. I'm thinking maybe just biting off parklets is enough as a subject without going into sidewalk dining. And of course, there's dining on private property, Fishwife. I mean, yeah, but Fishwife being an excellent example, and then Peppers as well. And there's Peppers is on the city lot, right?
It's a city lot.
Yeah, but it's not in the right of way. Is that considered as a parking lot a right of way? Am I mistaken?
I think that would be considered the same. It's a parking space that you're occupying as public. I mean, it's a permit required parking space, but I think it's arguably the same. And the city attorney can splice that one if you like.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll assess whether or not that's under the same program, because encroachments are usually right of way. Whereas the city parking lots are city property that we own and fee, and it's a slightly different analysis, but there could be a license for a parking lot that's similar to your outdoor dining program. But that's a good point. We'll just have to look at that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe that is a technical point. It's parklet, but it's not in the right of way. I'm not sure. I'll let you, figure that out. I'm thinking of the code. There should be an appeal process. I think the staff report referred to an appeal process in Title 15. I couldn't find it. So anyhow, it should be in there, right?
There will be an appeal period process built into the draft that we have currently in Title 15.
And so if you didn't issue a permit, then I assume it would go to the Planning Commission on appeal? Probably.
Well, Title 15, Mr. Mayor, is not under the Planning Commission purview, so it would probably go to the Administrative Hearing Panel or something like that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. And so the current parklets, there's a permit already in place for that.
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, okay. So this manual doesn't address current conditions specifically. And I noticed we never used the word grandfathering in, though Councilmember Coletti did come very, very close to that discussion. So I think we need to have, and it was mentioned that we need permits for the existing parklets. Absolutely. So please, let's put that in the manual. I think that would be a good idea. And I like that you're going to bring back the manual. And it's just a nitpicking, but it's been called a handbook, a pamphlet, guidelines, like the one word manual, program manual, and that it goes into council policy. That gives it the linkage to this body. And then there's the code. And then you're going to bring back the master fee schedule, or that part of it. I think it would be good, and we've several people have mentioned it, that comes back all at the same time. So we see all the pieces. Because I'm wondering, what part goes in the code is law, right? And what part is the policy part? And I agree with Councilmember Coletti. I would like to see more details in the manual. And what we heard about the height, for instance, and requirement of an inspection by the fire department. I don't know if they've already done that. The fire department, and that they meet all the ADA compliance and that sort. Do they need a fire extinguisher if they have propane? Those kind of things. They're small, but I think Councilmember McDonald's made a comment about putting it in the guidelines. Just lets everybody know this is right. This is the set of expectations. It's not. It's not arbitrary. So, and speaking of grandfathering, so that should include Happy Girl Kitchen, which predates COVID. And so I'm not sure if they have a different set of guidelines or approvals by the city. No, the same. Okay. And there were a few points maybe council needs to discuss, and one is, are the parklets can they be used by non-patrons? And I'm very much leaning towards no, not really. If they paid for the structure and they paid a fee, encroachment fee, then Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want the city attorney to jump in, but last jurisdiction I worked had a number of parklet and outdoor dining areas, and we had all of the licensees post a sign that they were open to the public. Now, I think someone mentioned, it might have been Councilmember Coletti. Did we have a lot of non-customers using them? No, not really, but it just seemed to be the path of less resistance, just to say that that they were open technically. Now, I'd want the city attorney to jump in on that, but that was the approach we took in the last jurisdiction where I worked.
I think both approaches are open to you since it's a permit program. It's still the city's right of way, and you could take either approach. But I see the point that it's because they're public right of way. We want the public to be able to use them. It's just it could cause. I mean, just from a policy standpoint, it could cause some conflict between busy restaurants and people wanting to sit in a parklet that's busy. But I mean, there may be a way to work around that.
So that sounds like that's an area for further discussion. There was some text about vacant parklets. And so think about that. I think I saw something about 20 days, and these parklets are structures, they're not a tent. You don't pack them up and, ship them out in an hour. So I think that needs to be rethought. Maybe that just falls under the 1 year, permitting term. If it's not been used for a year, then there certainly needs to be discussion with the business owner. I saw something about encroachment and operational permits. Are they different?
Yes, they are. So one of the subcommittee recommendations was for the fire department to issue an operational permit through the fire department for parklets. And maybe the fire chief, if you want to, I'll pull the fire chief. He's sitting up. I'll let him address
Need
that.
some exercise to come up here. But, I'm also wondering, they need a construction permit. It can't be just encroachment and operational, right? Isn't there, you have to sign off on the construction as well. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, with respect to permit from the fire department, it would not be required under normal circumstances. Usually when you build a new structure, we make sure that things are consistent with code requirements. A encroachment permit can have conditions attached to it that you do this, 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 and this, and it doesn't require a separate permit or a separate inspection from us to verify. I mean, it would be verified initially, but we don't have to come back out and do another inspection. If it's noted at some point that you're out of compliance, then the encroachment permit would give you the tool to enforce compliance as well. So in general, I would say there would not be an operational permit necessary from the fire department to keep the parklet safe from our perspective.
Well, if you're implying that a business owner could just get one permit done, that could make life a lot easier for everybody.
Certainly, yes.
And yes, that is the intent, that an encroachment permit that would have all of the details necessary to inspect and have the different requirements that are laid out through the manual of heights of guardrails, heights of different things, the materials you're going to use, those sorts of things would be bundled into the encroachment permit.
Just one permit.
One permit.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just quickly, I'm of the camp here that we're endorsing parklets and the streets, and so the parklets are there in the street. So you have to go figure out what's the right speed on the street rather than the reverse. I say fees. Yeah, I absolutely support. Businesses are using public space, and absolutely, it's the cost of doing business. From one of the discussions, there was some comments about restriping the street as part of this parklet discussion. I hope we're not talking about that. This isn't an exercise and we're restriping and reconfiguring parking spaces downtown, I hope. That's not my intent. Was it planning's intent?
When we initially went to the Traffic Safety Committee, we had a couple suggestions for changing some striping for parking layouts. The Traffic Safety Committee did have they did have a recommendation to remove some parking as potentially a pilot for a block. One of the things that we will be looking at with the traffic engineer as it relates to existing parklets are sightlines and access and there's we will put it in the hands of the experts, which is our traffic engineer, to come up with recommendations.
But not part of this topic, parklets.
The only way that we might consider things would be if the traffic engineer believes that we need to do some minor additional striping on the street to give sightlines better, then we would consider that.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I heard a suggestion from the public, Mike Gibbs, about incentivizing and helping business owners, restaurateurs, with any modifications that might make their parklet safer. And I'd certainly be in favor of that. Absolutely. And along those lines, I'd like to expand the facade program, which has been quite successful. And so I think it's a 50-50 contribution up to $5,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
I'd like to expand that to beautifying the parklets. We never talked about aesthetics, and I like they're all different, and that's Pacific Grove. You know, we're a bit funky in that regard, and so be it. So anyhow, so facade program, that's my suggestion. Some other time.
Oh, yeah, so I'll be launching that program in January of 2023 again. And I don't believe there's anything that would stop us from allowing a parklet to apply.
For business owners to express their creativity in good taste, of course. All right, that's all. Thank you for listening to me and council. Mr. Harvey, I think we provided direction.
Would you mind, Mayor, giving us a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to just so we've received recommendations, and so we don't need to do a motion, but I'm going to provide direction as discussed to city staff to move forward with a parklet program based on Title 15 with a parklet program manual and additional fees in the master fee schedule. That's my motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Keel.
Could I just ask one clarifying question? I did hear Councilmember Coletti bring up the point of capping the number of parklets. Is there a desire for the council for us to explore capping the number?
That's an interesting question.
I'm not for capping the numbers of parklets. I think we got quite a few parklets now, and possibly in the future to see, if we get 150,000 parklets in Pacific Grove, we need to cap that.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll take a lesson from our history, PG history books. we gave out a bunch of license for STRs and took damn near 5 years to claw a lot of them back. So if you can be proactive, and when I was mentioning cap, I kind of leveraged that off into another direction too about concentration, is that you wouldn't want to see the entire block face occupied by not STRs, parklets. And I think I think that would be something we should direct staff to consider, is the concentration.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Councilmember Coletti, is that we do need to limit. I mean, we only have so many locations for restaurants, by the way. So, you know, I think capping it would be a great idea and working on that.
And to that point, parklets are for restaurants. So if there's limited number of restaurant locations, then that provides and restaurants with a adjacent parking, public parking, and that in itself would naturally limit that. Anyhow, Councilmember Peduri.
Yeah, I would suggest starting with an initial cap and then examine it in the future, because we don't know what we don't know. We're still trying to figure all of this out. So if there's a suggestion for a cap, my suggestion is we have it as an initial cap program, review it maybe in 2024 and see where that takes us. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
I don't know what that means exactly.
Yeah.
What does that mean, an initial cap?
So for the purposes of this ordinance, we create a cap number, and let's say whatever that cap number is can be determined by council and in conjunction with the staff. And there should be language in there to say that that cap will be examined at a later point in time.
Okay. I mean, there's a total cap and then there's a cap on block face, but yeah, okay. Whatever,
Anyhow,
whatever it ends up being.
I think that's a discussion for another night. I think that's okay.
I've got, I think we're not, I don't think we're done yet. I mean, we need to, so I think for me, the big issue is specificity in the manual. I cited Sausalito. I thought that was a good example of a lot of the specificity that I think that needs to exist. And for instance, the city council adopted 2 ordinances allowing temporary parklet program. There is right here in the ordinance that we're currently operating under. It says sides of the parklets must be transparent beginning 48 inches above the floor level. So you're already kind of talking about a height limit in our existing ordinance. I think we need one in the manual as well. I also, you know, the mayor brought up the issue of our existing outside dining ordinance in Title 15. And I think the city attorney should review that only to the extent that it shouldn't have any inconsistencies in it with what we're trying to achieve with this parklet ordinance. So I think if there are any inconsistencies or compliance issues, I think it should be reviewed. Not necessarily amended, but it should be reviewed. And I think and getting to the question of specificity, people come and go, staff comes and goes, but the document remains. And we need to make sure there is much detail in it as possible. So there isn't any ambiguity. And then finally, my last point, Your Honor, is that we really haven't touched on the big issue that I thought was going to be discussed, and that was what the setback from a corner should be. And that never really came up. I think that's something that we need. We've heard that the Santa Rosa parklet program was kind of the model that we leveraged off of. Well, the Santa Rosa ordinance or their parklet, it was 25 feet from the corner. And we're not even considering that. I think staff does need to consider that. And I think they need to bring back some choices for us to review. Don't know where it's going to go. Page 8, I'd like to direct staff to page 8 of the proposed or the draft. What are we calling it? The manual. So this is up in paragraph 1 at the top of the page. I'm starting at where it says parklets may extend across the frontage of an adjacent building. It says that parklets may extend across the frontage of an adjacent business. In this case, if written permission is obtained from the adjacent property owner or business operator. You need to strike business operator. That's going to have to be totally at the discretion of the property owner, I would say. So that's a proposed modification. Happy solstice.
All right, I think this is, I don't know, we want to call it round 1, but thank you very much.
I have a question, Your Honor.
Oh, pardon?
I have a question.
Yeah.
It might be for fire, but is there a capacity limit inside a parklet?
Well, the building code sets occupancy limits based on square footage and number of occupants, number of exits. So you take the size and it establishes an occupant load.
Okay, perfect. And can we see that on the plan as well on the?
We can certainly request that they state an occupant load and seating plan.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Your Honor, the Mayor, Greg Rubens here. I think there was a motion and a second, if I'm not mistaken, but there was a lot of discussion about what should be included. I think that it's with all the issues that we've received tonight that it would be hard to incorporate all those into a motion, and it's probably a good idea that the staff take the direction the council has provided us to come back to you with options as was suggested about what that final ordinance and program is going to look like. I think we have direction to come back to you. That's clear, and that's already the direction we've been given. But I just the idea of trying to form a motion out of the discussion, I think, might be difficult.
Well, I think that's a good point. We're not trying, we're gonna rely on staff, and then of course there's always the video of this meeting to refresh anyone's memory, and we're going to have another shot at this. So, but I think we've got the bigger picture in place, and for the public also provide more details, more information, feedback when we get more more input from staff. Councilmember McConnell.
Yeah, one thing I did want to ask is you'd mentioned the striping, and one of the things I was wondering is if that was intended to allow for adding the 3-foot, I think it was, setbacks between the existing parklets, assuming we're keeping existing parklets. Some of them are right on the line of a parking space. So a passenger or the driver cannot get out. And so what was going through my mind reading that is, would that be some of the potentials for restriping where you move the parking space to not have to move the parklet?
That would be a consideration.
Are we finished for tonight? Yeah, we need a, do you want to withdraw the motion? No.
He's asking about a vote, so.
Yeah, we need to vote. We've got a motion and a second.
We don't want to vote on it. I'm just saying, if there's a question, you can always just withdraw it and then we're done.
But Mr. Harvey wanted a motion. Motion's on the floor.
Mr. Mayor,
let's do it.
I'll take the city attorney's recommendation. He's suggesting not to do that.
Oh, not to.
Yeah, I'm going to take his
Okay.
recommendation.
That's correct. If I was unclear, I apologize. That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The end result should be the same. So, all right. We have one more item on the agenda, 13A. Chevrolet Tahoe police vehicle purchase. Ms. Francis. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, we have a recommendation before you to direct the city manager to award a purchase order for the procurement of a 2023 patrol-rated Chevy Tahoe, which also includes the outfitting of the vehicle for public safety equipment requirements. During the fiscal year budget process in the capital outlay program, we had submitted a request to purchase a hybrid vehicle for our fleet. Earlier this year, we placed an order. However, Ford has stopped making the hybrid Explorers. Something to do with chip and transmission problems that they were having with the vehicle. Ford has not indicated any date to when they will start making the vehicles. And so we had city staff at the police department and both internally and with mechanical over at Public Works do a lot of research on police rated vehicles and their availability. What we were able to find is that Seaside dealership, Premier Chevy, they have in stock patrol rated vehicles, which is fantastic. The problem is, or not in alignment with the city council's goals, is that it is a gas vehicle and it's not hybrid or electric. Can you go to the next slide? So we looked at different dealerships in the state of California, and these are some of the quotes that we received as it relates to Tahoes. The other dealerships, these are quotes for vehicle orders and not vehicles that they have in stock currently. And in addition, we received quotes from outfitters. So the two examples for the Watsonville and my Chevrolet, you can see the vehicle quote there. Lair and EVS are two vehicle outfitters. Their quotes are in there, and then the total vehicle range. The cheapest option is to award a purchase order with Premier Chevy in Seaside for the combined package is what they're selling us. Again, it's in stock right now. And so city staff's recommendation is to go with Premier Chevrolet of Seaside for both the purchase of the vehicle and the outfitting of public safety equipment. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No hands are raised.
All right, to bring it back to council, Councilmember Beck.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Francis, could I just get the cost of the hybrid? Do you recall what that was, what we had budgeted for? And I'm glad they realized the error prior to us purchasing it.
Well, the total capital outlay budget that was approved by City Council was $70,000. As far as the hybrid quote order that we received, yeah, it was, yeah, between, correct, yeah. So between 50 and 55 or $56,000 just for the purchase of the vehicle. So it'd be an additional $20,000 to $26,000 to have it outfitted.
Okay, thank you.
Any further council discussion? Councilmember Pedori.
You probably know where I'm going with this. But can I ask why an EV coat was not provided, is not in the mix here?
An electric vehicle
Yes.
quote. So right now, there are no patrol rated electric vehicles that have been approved for use in law enforcement. We usually go off of CHP standards and Michigan State Police. They do safety ratings and testing, and there are none available to date.
The reason I ask is because Seaside advertised a lot of these vehicles. I know Fremont has some vehicles as well. So I'm just curious as to why other cities are able to procure EV vehicles, whereas we are not able to. So that's a question that I'm not going to support this, generally speaking. The other thing that concerned me was the statement over here in the agenda report, which says the city has spent tens of thousands of dollars in this fiscal year to repair the aging fleet. And I think when we look at the cost of the vehicle for a gasoline vehicle, people, I mean, generally what we think is, oh, great, it's 76,000, we're done. But that's not the case. So you have this repair program that you continuously have to spend money on, which actually adds on to the cost of the vehicle. So my view is that we need to look at the city's fleet in its entirety. And we need to come to some kind of, the council needs to know when we're saying aging fleet, where is the rest of the fleet in this process? And what are our steps that we are taking to make sure that we're doing the right thing with respect to council goals? So like you mentioned, we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We want to reduce the carbon footprint, so on and so forth. So I'll be interested to see what we have, what our plan of action is, so to speak, for the future. I know, like, for example, Caltrans is intending to convert all of its, not all of its, but 1,200 vehicles. They have a plan of action saying 1,200 vehicles of our fleet will be converted to EV by 2030. So we need to come up with some kind of strategic plan like that too, and work towards that plan. Otherwise, we'll continue to purchase gas vehicles and contribute to the environment. But thank you.
So I'm confused. So does Seaside, the local, other municipalities have electric vehicles in their police fleet? You know?
Yes, they have Teslas in use right now. I know Fremont does also have Teslas, but they've been having problems with them because it's so weighted down with equipment. And I know the cost is cost prohibitive. Seaside used grant funding that they had received to purchase the Teslas. And I think they put them in use within like the last year or so. So not necessarily tested, tried and true. And so that's why our recommendation, unfortunately, is to go with the Chevy Tahoe at this time.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you. Thank you, Jocelyn. We don't own any Chevrolets currently, is that right? In the police force fleet?
Correct. Yeah. Right now we have Fords and Dodges.
Okay. I looked, I just did a quick internet search on this model and year, and it comes with 3 engine options. Do you happen to know which engine we're getting? Is it the big 420 or is it the 355, or they even have a V6 diesel, I think, but I don't know. It is what it is. Yeah, but I knew Chaps was going to ask that question, so I'd hope that would mollify his concerns that we're getting the smaller gas engine. Maybe not. I don't know.
All right. And any other discussion? Looks like we're ready for a motion.
Motion to approve, Your Honor. Second.
May we have a vote, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Emilio.
Aye.
Councilmember Beck,
Aye.
Councilmember Coletti,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald, Councilmember Pedori, Mayor Peak.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. Councilmember Pedori voting no.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you to the public, to staff, my colleagues for being here tonight and working through the issues. Happy holidays and a safe and enjoyable new year for everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
See you in the morning.
And then on the seaside and the Fremont thing is going to go away, so you're going to need some specifics. And you're going to put it on here. So,